Somewhere in my empty house.
Where's doing your refrigerator?
Everything gold.
Yeah.
Welcome to tonight's pre-meeting, and I'll go around and ask if there's any questions for agenda review first. Counselor Sadi? Counselor Seymour?
No.
Counselor Emmons? Counselor Baker?
I might have some on the private activity bonds.
You don't want to ask him now?
No, well, I can ask now.
Go for it.
Okay.
That's what I'm asking.
I know that we put out a sort of a general ask for this, and the only people who showed up were really Maker,
Right.
okay? And I know that was the situation last year, right?
Last year, I don't
think it was
know.
in the notes that it was.
Why don't you come on up? Come on up. We'll let, since I'm kind of new to the table here, I'll let our folks from Economic Development, Lindsay Kimball, speak to the, kind of the history, if you will, if that's okay.
Sure. Lindsay Kimball, Economic Development Director, and Molly Terr, our Housing Coordinator. That is correct. Last year, we only received that one application, went through our application process for the PABs. Yes, sir.
As I remember the first time on the council, every year we gave it to Adams County. Have we ever given it to someone? Because it's almost like we're a straw, recipient. We get the thing, but we always give it away.
That
So-
is, yeah, we have in the past given it to Chaffa. This is just during the 5 years I've been here. We have awarded the PAB to Chaffa upon their request, and it was used to provide backing to create low-interest mortgages and down payment assistance for our residents. So they will actually use that to boost another program that they offer. And additionally to that, we had Chaffa make a request for us, I think it was about 3 years ago. They needed the bonds to support Heritage at Church Ranch and St. Mark Village, because they had 2 LIHTC applications that preceded our bonding activity, and they wanted to know if we would award the bonds to Chaffa to use for those projects.
Okay. Would it be beneficial if we were more, if we did more outreach to get people specifically within our city to use them to benefit our city?
I would answer, I'm sorry, Molly, I would, I'll take that one. The user group is such a small universe of folks who can correctly utilize and are sophisticated enough to utilize the PAB. We generally will know who those folks are. It's the Chaffas or Foothills or Adams County or someone in the affordable housing area. And I would say we know who our audience is, and it's a very narrow
Okay.
audience.
And these are pretty complicated because aren't they federal tax-related
Yes.
bonds?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, we have a list of developers who have worked in Westminster, and I just send the notice out to them every year. So it's not just the housing authority partners, it's not-for-profit developers, as well as some of the private sector.
Okay, thank you, that was my question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, before you leave, I was curious on so like with Chaffa, you say to benefit our residents. So it specifically goes to Westminster residents and Chaffa gets the dollars?
So that was in prior year, the year before, I think 2021.
It's been a few years, yeah.
Few years, but yes, so the restriction is that it would have to go to help Westminster residents with rate reductions on their mortgage, first-time home buyer assistance.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Is that, sorry, as you turn around and sit down, is that program with the mortgage assistance, is that something that's still a possibility now?
And I sent Dan, my contact for that program at Chaffa, the opportunity to apply, and they did not apply.
Oh, so they have to request, or?
They have to
you let them
request
know?
from us our PAB, just as anyone else does.
When you reach out to them, do you do that once? I'm not only curious because I know that's a great program for first-time home buyers. I benefited from that when I bought my home 12, 13 years ago. So, I mean, if we could ping them again, I mean, that's a good program if it's specifically going to Westminster residents, and it helps folks get into single-family homes, amongst other things that they do with it, so.
Thank you. They, the program still exists, and our residents are welcome to apply, and we can get some more information about that out to the residents. One of the things that's happening with the PAB in this climate is we're all looking at what is happening at the Uplands site. And so all of the Uplands developers are approaching Chaffa for Light Tech. And so Chaffa is sort of coordinating with them behind the scenes to make sure they get what they need.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
Anybody
Sorry.
else?
One more thing. Can you get us information that we can send out to residents as well on how they can apply?
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, happy to.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
Nope.
Councilor Namella?
No, I have mine answered.
Okay. City Council reports, Councilor Rosati?
Just wanted to reiterate, so I sent a note to City Manager Mark Freitag and our Fire Chief, Derek Menard, on the props. So I spoke at the Covenant Living Retirement Home, and they wanted me to bring back the message that the fire department is very dependable and they just love everything that they do for them. The service is very high quality, and they wanted them to know that. So just wanted to say that on the record.
Thank you.
Councilor Seymour?
Wednesday, I dropped in on the Big Tri Creek improvement update that they were had at the pavilion at City Park Lake, and the staff was had some good boards laid out on that, and there was residents coming in and out, and there was, you know, I think the best part that was being shown on that is the end result of what the Big Dry Creek looks like between Old Wadsworth and Westcliff Parkway, how that significantly changed that flow and made that much more user-friendly. And so it was, I'd say, a steady flow of residents coming over, so that was good. After that, then I attended the Special Permits and Licensing Board. We have a new business that received, two businesses got liquor license that night. One of them, you get to smash electronics, so it's a double-edged thing. They get recycled electronics. They let customers pay money to smash them, and then they recycle, you know, what they pull out of it. So it's a good thing, two things. But then also the good news of the evening was the owner and of a group called the Stillery, no D in there, just Stillery, is going to. They applied for and received their liquor license for the old Rock Bottom restaurant. And so they are a group out of Nashville. They have 3 locations in Nashville. They currently have one in Chandler, one in North Phoenix. I think they're opening 1 or 2 more in that metroplex. And they picked Westminster specifically for that location and being a central part of the area. Right now, they're at, they believe, about $1.4 million in investment in that, including around $110,000 sound system. So it's built around a chef-based menu, but the owner has been featured on some morning news shows, national and Food Network, with the specialty mac and cheese with chicken on top of it. So, you know, we'll have to wait and see on that one, but live music all the time. It's not a honky-tonk, but just a place that they said, you know, we want a place where people can come and have conversation. And on weekends, they will be flying in Nashville talent to play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights.
Wow.
So, great reuse of that building right there. They're excited about it. And so, also learned too that the retailers around there with the new parking garage there for the units have 200 spaces that are separated for the retail unit. So that'll be a positive when that opens for the retail around there too. So that was.
Tell them about the fire ale stuff?
Yeah, that'd be good to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can bring back the firefighter ale
Yeah.
again. Talking, well, they're partners in Orchard too. They can do a dual one, but yeah. So that was good news from a economic development standpoint, and that was it for the week.
Thanks. Councilor Emmons?
And I informally met with North Metro Arts Alliance last Thursday to help them with their fundraiser that they're preparing for Westy Fest on Saturday. So much busier week this week than last week, with Historic Landmark Board coming up on Wednesday. And then our telephone town hall on Thursday, which I'm sure Mark is going to cover in his report. And then Westy Brewfest on Saturday. So,
Busy week.
yep.
Counselor Baker?
I was asked if I could get an update on several projects that are hanging, and I thought of some more. Where do we stand with the Knox Court? Has that gone to a sale and all that kind of stuff? Or are we still doing the legal maneuvering, or
Any
will that
updates?
take more thought?
Yeah. I haven't had an update recently, and so I'd have to follow up with you, but I can do that by email.
Okay, and then I add in, do we have any idea when the trash at Semper Gardens is gonna be removed? Or Sheridan at 104th?
The trees.
Claw property.
Oh, the whole squaw.
Holtzclaw.
It's been reduced. I mean, if you drive by, you can see there's a gentleman that's harvesting some of the wood out of there, but I don't know if we have any further updates on when the end date of that would be. I'll ask Community Development Director Downing to speak to that, but there was a contract where a gentleman was coming in and cutting wood out of there to process and utilize. So any updates?
I have seen some email traffic on that. You know, that's the site of a proposed development. We've been in contact with Berkeley Homes, the developer, and are working through the process of trying to determine how we can eliminate the trash, perhaps even before the approval of the development proposal. That'll be coming to council, I believe, in September, if I'm not mistaken. And so that would certainly be part of their project for sure, but we're working on a plan to get it done before that time. The cleanup.
Well, was my understanding that it was always who's gonna pay for it, the old owner or the new?
Exactly.
Okay, and was there some reason part of it was covered up with a tarp? Do we have concerns about asbestos or something like that?
Well, part of the demolition was the old house that was there.
I think there were two houses that were there.
I think
One
you're
was
right.
sort of a decent house and one was horrible.
Correct. So I'm just guessing, Counselor, but I think probably the debris from the house has probably been covered up out of precaution.
Okay, and then that led me to think of when they knocked down the old buildings at the Uplands, are those gonna be asbestos contaminated too?
I don't know. I'll have to find out. and report
Because
back
we
to you.
do have, not only do we have residents around there, but we have 3 schools too.
Absolutely,
Or 4, is it really?
correct.
Okay, if we could find some answers to like the lien on the blown-up house and how we can make sure our residents are getting really protected, that'd be very helpful.
Certainly.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I visited the PRNL board for Counselor Seymour on Thursday. Fun group. They were a little short on people. They didn't have quorum, so, but they still had their meeting, and they talked about their grant program. They also had a visit from Andrew Spurgeon to go over what the process is gonna look like for their vision plan. And so he just kind of shared, how that's gonna go down, and, shared that he would be back to get feedback from them. I think he was saying he thought for sure 3 to 4 times, maybe more, depending on how the process goes. And that was primarily what they got some different updates from the different areas. This is the first time I've been able to attend that one, so. So it was new to me, but they went through all the different parks and open space, and they asked questions about playgrounds and stuff, and so very informative meeting. So good group of folks.
Counselor Novella?
So last week I attended Dr. Cog, and I'm just trying to remind myself, there wasn't anything that was overwhelmingly different than what we've seen, and we adopted most recent transportation improvement program, which is the next 4 years of transportation improvements, which passes our current need for reduced emissions. So I just thought it'd be kind of fun to, I'll just give you a quick thing. Some quick numbers. They said that over 190 intersections will be improved for better operations for all modes with this plan. There's 95 miles of bike ped facilities. It does also fund it's funding 34 studies for future improvements, and over 70% of them implement complete streets elements. Over 80% improve connections to transit, and so it represents $495 million in transportation investments, and collectively $2.2 billion in transportation investments from all the sources that are feeding into those projects. So it's pretty significant, and they're moving us forward as a region. And the only other thing that we did was just more formally update the work plan for DRCOG, which now, because of the bipartisan infrastructure law adopted by Congress, they incorporated language that requires that all MPOs or metropolitan planning organizations like DRCOG need to integrate housing planning with transportation. So that will continue to be something that that organization looks at, and they are just big picture wise, they're still working on their strategic economic plan for the region, which will help access funding for economic development, but they're also starting to look at whether or not they put together a housing task force and see if, what they want to do for addressing this need to look at housing, knowing that they're trying to be more proactive with getting involved in the state discussion around this housing transportation connection. Obviously, 213 didn't go through last year, but it's still a priority for the state and or for the governor. And DRCOG definitely wants to be more involved in kind of coalescing community and municipality and input on what could be happening. So that's been a good dialogue, and I hope that it continues, because I think there's quite a diverse mix of municipalities that are in DRCOG that regularly show up and share their points of view. So I think, yeah, so I'll keep you guys updated as that fleshes out a little bit more. But
Great, thanks. I agree, the Big Dry Creek was, I haven't gone any place that people haven't said how great it was. So whoever I'll put that on, people just have cornered me wherever, and they just have said that was a great thing. What else was there? I'm excited about the distillery. My husband was just asking on our W with the pugs today. Don't see what else I was thinking of. On my personal note, we went in today thinking what the plan was going to be, and got a 180-degree turn. I finished some tests last week, and I guess the good news is I don't have to have surgery. They are going to use pill therapy and shrink this puppy down, and so that's good news. And I'm feeling good, so. I had an ADA meeting, our pre-meeting for this Friday, and they're trying to update, because when I saw last month's report of all of the things everybody in this north area is doing, we had 2 things that are now done, and so they've decided, with COVID done and whatnot, it's time to update that list and get things back on there that haven't been done yet, and remove the things that have been done. So we talked about that a lot. We're working with, in the coming months, the 2 rail authorities that are still talking about rail. And I have a meeting with one of the rails Friday with the Commuting Solutions Group. So always something, but good things. Don't forget to do your green. You have many things.
I forgot 2 more items. One is I would like to talk about our like exclusive real estate agent for the new downtown. And number two is, are we going to review the ACFR for 2022? It's published, it's up on the site. I think there's some very important, really, reports included in that. So I would urge us to take time to do that.
Mayor, if I could answer the one on the ACFR. The ACFR is a study session item scheduled for August 7th.
Good.
So that's part of our study session for that. Okay.
And I think back when, don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but as far as our exclusive agent, that was coming back to us in September or October?
Yes.
Because that contract was up anyway.
Correct.
Okay. So we'll be seeing it later this year.
So are we paying on it still? Because it's like $15,000 a month, isn't it?
We are until the contract ends, yes.
Anything else for the good of the order?
I do,
Oh.
Mayor, real quick, for the council. One thing we put in your packet tonight was a little smart card on some of our both city and community facts. These are things that I've been asked since, I've arrived. I didn't necessarily have them readily available, so we've captured them on a little card that I carry as a cheat sheet, passed them out to the council. You probably already know a lot of these things, but it's certainly been helpful to me and paid dividends. So we share that with you, and we'll update that as we move forward. That's all I have.
Thanks. If there's nothing else, 10 minutes and we'll see you at the dais.
we need, stay positive.
Welcome to tonight's meeting, July 24th, 2023. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the City Council meeting for July 24th. We thank you for coming and would like to remind all in attendance that our meetings are subject to the rules of decorum that are posted on the back of the room. We also want to be sure all feel welcome and remind you that there is an expectation that no attendee shall disrupt the meeting and that threats and intimidation are prohibited. Signs and placards are prohibited in the council chambers, and all attendees shall remain seated in the seats provided, not in the aisles, nor shall the doorways be blocked. Please remember, citizens in the gallery are not allowed to shout out or speak out except at the podium under public comment. Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Present.
Counselor Emmons.
Present.
Counselor Izadi.
Here.
Mayor McNally.
Here.
Counselor Nurmala. Here. Counselor Seymour.
Here.
That brings us to consideration of minutes of July 10th. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the July 10th, 2023 meeting as presented.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 10th, 2023 as written. Is there any further discussion or changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That brings us to our favorite thing of the night, presentations. We just like to say, if you're here with one of the award winners, please come up with them. If you're a friend, family, neighbor, we don't care. Bring your support system up. And we start out with our 20-year certificates with Counselor Izadi.
All right. I'm here to present employees who have worked here 20 years or more. This one. So is Sherry here? How are you? Good. Would you like to introduce yourself and your guests?
Hi, I'm Sherry Spotke. I work for the Police Department. I'm the Public Information Officer, and this is our good family friend, Steve Kretzel.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. That's right. What he said? Hired in July 2003. She came from the Thornton Police Department, where she worked as a records technician and interim records manager. Sherry comes from a long line of law enforcement officers, is a third-generation police officer. Sherry's father worked at the North Glen Police Department and was later the chief investigator for the Adams County Attorney's Office. For the past 15 years, Sherry has worked as the public information officer for the police department. Sherry has served as a field training instructor and has been actively involved in the crisis intervention program as a SWAT hostage negotiator and is the current team leader of the crisis negotiation team for the SWAT team. In her time away from work, Sherry enjoys spending time with her friends, family, and dog, Cooper. Thank you for everything you do. Would you like to say anything before we present this?
No, I won't. Thank you.
Okay. She's a woman of short words, a few words, but very important to the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this is your certificate and pen in here.
All right, everyone together real quick. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I do the 25-year award. You get a little something extra. So, Angie Alt Williams, would you please come on down? You get a prize tonight. I love it. Hi, come on up. We'll come on down this way so we get everybody in here. Hi, how are you? Hi. What's your name? Angie, we will let you introduce this crowd.
Hi, everyone. This is my husband, Chris Williams, also works for the city of 39 years. Our grandson, Gregory. Our grandson, Stelios. Our grandson, CJ. Son-in-law, Chris. Daughter, Jessica. Granddaughter, Aurora. Ethan, our grandson. Our daughter, Brianna. Her husband, Tim. Wolfgang, our grandson. Jackie, a lifetime friend, partner, and our son, Josh. Did I get everybody? Yes. Did I get everybody?
Yes, great job. Yeah. Angie was hired in 1998 as a clerk typist too. Angie's job was reclassified to secretary in 2005, and in 2016, Angie was promoted to executive assistant. Angie has received a citywide Spirit Award in recognition of her customer service and her usage of the city's Access Westminster program. She is an external customer service champion, award winner, and has received several Team in Action awards. Angie enjoys spending time with her family and has been married to her husband, Chris, for 37 years. Chris has worked for the city the past 39 years. The last 25 have been with the IT department. Together, they have 3 children, their son, Joshua, and an Aloha database administrator for the Einstein Bagels Corporation. Daughter Jessica provides customer service for Wayfair, and daughter Biana is an Epic anatomic pathology software small business. Jessica's husband, Chris, is a veteran and full-time student at Metropolitan State University and is interning and working for the city's recreation division. Brianna's husband, Tim, is a data analyst for a marketing company based in Cleveland. Angie and Chris have 6 grandchildren ranging from the age of 9 months to 15 years. They have 2 grand dogs, Knox. What kind?
Australian Shepherd. No.
Oh, you say here, an 8-year-old Alaskan Malamute, and George, who is a lovable rescue. Angie has received or enjoyed traveling to many places, which includes Mexico, Ireland, and most of the United States. Her favorite pastime is relaxing, spending time with her family, and taking afternoon naps. Here is your certificate.
Thank you.
Here is your pin.
Thank you.
And here is the check.
Thank you.
We're squeezing as best you can.
Move in, baby.
All right, everyone looking right here at me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Great job, everybody.
I love it. Lance Johnson. Oh, Christopher Johnson, sorry. I saw Lance out there. Chris Johnson. Going, gone. Sorry, Lance.
He's probably next.
I'm not sure if I turned it. It says it's on. You want to introduce us?
I do. This is my wife, Lisa. We've been married for 27 years. This is our oldest of 2 sons, Martin. The younger one didn't want to come tonight, so.
Well, he's on my list. Christopher Johnson has been with the city since July of 1998, when he started at Legacy Ridge Golf Course as an assistant superintendent. After 15 years of working on the golf course, Chris has been blessed and challenged by many opportunities in the Park Recs and Libraries Department. He is currently the Parks and Golf Superintendent, a role which he has filled the past 7 years. Over his career, Chris has been involved in many wonderful projects. Recently, he has helped with the expansion of the greenhouse, which is beautiful, the construction and activation of the nature play area and the park sites in the Westminster downtown area, and has assisted in the irrigation replacement and renovation of the golf courses, and that's been a big job. Chris has also collaborated on multiple team and action teams, recognized projects, and has been honored with a Spirit Award. Chris and his wife, Lisa, have been married for 27 years, have two tremendous young sons, aged 17 and 18, and a daughter with their own family. Chris and his family enjoy boating, camping, and spending time with family and friends. Here is your plaque. Here is your pin. And here's your check. Congratulations. Enjoy spending the money.
Thank you.
And we have somebody that was not able to attend, but you need to know about him. Scott Shipman started with the city in May of '98. He worked in the streets department as a maintenance worker for close to 2 years. Scott then took a position on the parks construction crew, where he worked under Jerry Magnetti, former park superintendent, for about 16 years. In this position, Scott was responsible for all the parks and playground construction projects. Scott then moved from the position of contract services technician. In that position, he is responsible for the contract utility locates for city parks and right-of-ways. Scott is currently the contract services coordinator and manages all of the contracts and contractors associated with each contract for the Parks Division. In his time away from work, Scott loves to spend time with his 19-year-old son, Alex. They go for motorcycle rides, hike in the mountains, attend car shows, and shoot sporting clays. Alex has recently become very interested in golf, and hopefully one day he will teach Scott a thing or two. So let's hear it for Scott Shipman.
Thank you. Could I have Lance Johnson come up here and join me, please? And I sure hope that you golf because your biography says so. Or at least points to you liking to golf. So why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Lance Johnson. I'm the Parks Golf and Open Space Manager in the Parks Recreational Libraries Department.
Thank you. And you've been with the city 30 years. Yes. Lance Johnson started with the city in the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department as golf maintenance supervisor during the construction and grow-in of Legacy Ridge in 1993 and was promoted to golf course superintendent in 1996. In 1998, he oversaw the construction, grow-in, and opening of Walnut Creek Golf Preserve. From 1998 to 2013, Lance oversaw maintenance operations for both golf courses. And in 2013, he was promoted to Recreation Facilities Superintendent, overseeing all golf course operations in 4 recreation facilities. In 2015, Lance was promoted to the position of Parks and Golf Manager, and now also oversees Open Space and Stanley Lake. Lance became a certified golf course superintendent through the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America in 2004. He served as the president of the Rocky Mountain Golf Course Superintendents Association in 2009, which has 640 members. He is president of the Rocky Mountain Environmental Golf Institute for 5 years, from 2009 to 2013. Lance also served as a statewide committee co-chair in the development of the Colorado Golf Industry Best Management Practices Guide, and has now been adopted by 75% of the golf courses in the state. Since 2015, Lance has also served on the board of directors for the Colorado Golf Association. And Lance has been married to his wife, Lynn, for 38 years. They have 2 sons who live in Littleton and Lakewood, and a daughter living in Chandler, Arizona. Congratulations.
to, do you have another one? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought,
Okay, could I have Bonnie Leuenberger join me with her and her guests?
ooh, look at another big crowd.
Hello. That's okay. Why don't you introduce us to all of your guests?
This is my daughter Lindsay, her daughter Reagan, Avery, Kendall, my husband Bert. We've been married 41 years. My son Justin, his daughter Trisea, and his wife Shelley.
Lindsay's a great name, by the way.
You spell it right, too.
Thank you. I agree. All right. Bonnie Leuenberger was hired in 1993 as a part-time clerk, typist 2 in the Community Development Department until she was hired as a full-time secretary in 1999. She has worked in the areas of engineering and economic development. Currently, Bonnie provides technical support to the Economic Development Department Community Development Block Grant CDBG program. Bonnie has been married to her husband, Bert, for 41 years this October. Together, they have a daughter whose family lives in Thornton and a son whose family lives in Parker. She enjoys spending time with her family, especially her granddaughters Avery, 12, Kendall, 12, Reagan, 8, and Tracy, 10. Bonnie's, Trisea. Excuse me. Bonnie's other interests include quilting, genealogy, and RVing, traveling with her pets. Congratulations on 30 years.
Thank you.
Hey, do me a favor and tuck that envelope behind the plaque. Perfect. All right, everyone all together. Look at me. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the friends and family that came out tonight. It's always our time to say thank you to you for sharing your special loved ones that got honored tonight with us. It is a great time to sneak out and enjoy your evening because we're getting on down to business, so it's okay to leave. The public comment portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the public to communicate with City Council. Each participant will be given no more than 5 minutes on any topic they choose. Public comment is not intended to be a back and forth discussion. If there is a public hearing scheduled for the item on which you wish to speak, please hold your comments until the public hearing is called. Tonight, we have 2 public hearings on the agenda. The first one is the PDP for filing 1, 10th replat, Block 17, Lot 25, and Lot 26 of the Bradburn subdivision planned unit development. And the second one is the 2023 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. City Clerk, how many people do we have signed up and on emails and voicemails?
We received 4 emails that were posted to packet. No voicemails were received, and we have 2 people signed up for public comment.
Thank you.
First public comment, John Palmer. Mr. Palmer, we're ready for you.
Me?
Yeah, you.
I thought it was last. Can I go first?
Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. John Palmer. I've got several inquiries from people down in the Harris
Park area inquiring why is the work stopped at the Swim and Fitness Center and when will it be finished? From what they've been told, the budget's gone. Don't understand that. If it's a contractor, it's their responsibility. Next, let's talk about a thing called code. Also the charter that all of you people stood up and took an oath to apply to, the code and charter. Make sure it was followed. There have been several inconsistencies that I brought forward to you with the planning department and their signage. The newest one is the B1 property up on Bradburn Boulevard. There's a problem with the signage. Go figure. Code says signs need to be 660 feet, not 663 feet. Now, John McConnell contests that it's 600 feet. He's using one of those measures that's a wheel. I asked, what is the accuracy? Well, somewhat accurate, not 100% accurate. I went up there with Mr. Wyckoff. We took my Lufkin 100-foot steel tape measure and walked it off from the first paint spot that Mr. Downing informed me to go from to where the sign is. The mark that Mr. McConnell put down is 2 foot short of the sign. When you actually measure the full distance, it's 663 feet, not 660 as code says. So why is it in conversations today that I'm being disregarded, just like many other times where it's not a big deal? Code says 660, not 663. That meeting needs to be postponed. The signs need to be reposted. And let's move forward instead of just rubber stamping this for the Uplands development people. Next. Another Uplands piece of property, the St. Charles development, also part of the St. Mark's, that's on the east side of Federal. They've scheduled a public hearing for Monday, August 2nd. Coincidentally, it's not on the city's website as required or has been in the past. Now, the thing that's very upsetting with this is they've scheduled it at the City Park Swim and Fitness Center. That's nowhere close to the Shaw Heights neighborhood. That's 5+ miles. They want our community to go to a community meeting. That's not right by any sense of the word, especially since there are 4 schools in that area. Last week, Uplands had a meeting at the Crown Point Academy on Thursday. There's no reason it can't be at the Crown Point, at Flynn Elementary, at Shaw Heights Junior High, at Ranham Junior High or middle school, whatever you want to call them these days. We shouldn't be forced to drive that far at 5:30 on August 2nd. I know that's not in the code, but that's just common sense. Now, when I spoke to Mr. Jacob Causa this afternoon about this, he said, well, that's all up to the developer. So I guess that means the developers are now running the planning department. They're telling the planning department when and where and what they're going to do. That's not right. I don't believe the planning department's paying Mr. Causa, Mr. McConnell, or Mr. Downing's salary. Last week, I brought forth an issue with the signs down at Schonenberg Farms, as you remember, with the wrong time. I got into a conversation with Mr. Downing about that. Mr. Downing said, well, what time did the meeting start? Or, excuse me, what time did the presentation start? That's not the point. The sign should have said 6:30 for the study session, not 7. It doesn't matter what time that presentation was made. Using that logic, I tried that with him on the hearing tomorrow night. I said, well, if the sign says 7 and they don't come forward in front of the Planning Commission till 8, then shouldn't the sign say 8 instead of 7? We're trying to have it both ways here. The sign needs to dictate what it is. Furthermore, the sign down at Schonenberg Farms, that the development we talked about last week, there were signs up there. Code mandates that those signs be removed in 72 hours. I was down there at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Both signs are still standing. The meeting before that, we had discussion about some signs over on 92nd that you couldn't read and didn't meet code because of the weeds. I'm sure you all remember that. Again, didn't meet code, but we went ahead and passed that. Therein lies another problem. The signs were there for 10 days after that hearing. I know there's no bite in the code for this, but still, Mr. Downing and his employees are responsible for making sure that these developers fulfill their obligations per the charter. I believe that's correct. I could be wrong. And again, I'm going to tail onto something that Councilor Baker asked about the demolition over at the Uplands property, the farmhouse. Quit looking at the clock. I saw you. Don't worry about it. About the abatement of the asbestos and lead-based products over at that property. It needs to be tinted. There are 3 schools in the general proximity, as well as the residents to the north of that. We need to look after their safety, especially the kids at the school, because they want to do this in August. Those schools will be in session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tom Lampo.
Welcome.
How are you guys all doing? Hopefully everything's going well. My name's Tom Lampo. I'm here to pray for the city of Westminster. Heavenly Father, in Jesus Christ's precious and holy name, we lift up the city of Westminster and all its people to you. All creation for all times is yours. You've given us Westminster, and we want you here with us. Isaiah 40:28 states, "Have you not known, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable." You are the creator, and you need to be recognized as the creator. Lord, we lift up the people of Westminster to you. We are a divided people. Our enemy has convinced us to pick sides. 2 Corinthians 11:14 states, "And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light." We have taken the bait our enemy has set for us, and we are a broken people. And this has led us to be conquered. Our eyes are blinded, and our judgment is cloudy. 1 Corinthians 3:19 plainly states, "For the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight." You have more for us, but we have settled. Our wisdom has gotten us where we are. But you have placed us here at this time, and this is an important time, a marker in time. Its significance is great. We need to unite under you if we are going to get from under the bondage of our enemy. Matthew 22:37 through 39 states, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." Unite us, help us to live heart, mind, and soul for you, everything we are without a doubt, and help us to love our neighbor as we see ourselves. Through the same lens we see ourselves, we need to look at others. I know your truth is on the horizon, and your righteous judgment is not far behind. We need to unite and be there for each other. In your precious and holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you. And have a
Thank
good day.
you. City Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, ladies and gentlemen, folks watching online. We'll go ahead and run through a couple updates. And so first slide. So first thing we wanted to do was share an initiative that is brand new for us, and that is that we're now posting a 6-month agenda on our website. And that really is with the intention of having a projection for the community to know. Getting some feedback. I don't know if anybody's hearing that, but we're getting some feedback. But at any rate, a transparency initiative, 6 months out, this is what we've got going on. And this will, address contracts, ordinances, any other city initiatives. You can see a snapshot of what it looks like to the right there in a picture. But if you go to our city website /agendas, you can access that, and we will update that and keep that running every Friday afternoon. So I think an important transparency initiative for us. And the other item I wanted to remind everybody about is in terms of, certainly transparency and engagement. Our city council will host a telephone town hall this Thursday night that goes from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. There are like 14,000 landlines in Westminster, and all of those will receive a call directly. If you have a cell phone and you live in Westminster, you will need to call in. The number is 855-962-1511. That information's on our website, certainly been posted out over social media. But again, an intention of being transparent with our community and certainly engaging and listening to the community. But 1 hour telephone town hall. Hope that our residents, business owners, and frankly, anybody interested can either listen in or dial in and ask questions. Next slide, please. Some Westy wins. So our Colorado Parks and Recreation Association held its lifeguard games earlier this month, and our aquatics team sent 10 of our lifeguards and 2 captains to those games, which were hosted by Waterworld here locally. And staff created a spirit video, which introduced their team. They were tested on practical skills, and they received almost a perfect score of 29.5 out of 30 possible points. They also participated in a variety of events, and they placed 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th in 4 of the different race categories against 32 other teams. And so kudos to our aquatics teams. I think that they certainly represented Westminster and our spirit values of innovation, pride, teamwork, and certainly having fun while doing that. So next slide. Some things to know, meetings coming up, events, Planning Commission meeting tomorrow evening, 7 to 9 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. The Environmental Advisory Board meeting Wednesday, 6:30 to 8 p.m. In the City Hall CMO conference room upstairs. Historic Landmark Board meeting Wednesday from 7 to 8:30 p.m. That's downstairs in the Parks Rec Library Conference Room B. As mentioned, the City Council's telephone town hall Thursday evening, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Again, those 14,000 landlines in the community will be called directly, and if you have a cell phone, you have to dial in. That's 855-962-1511. Neighborhood Nights, Friday, July 28th at McFall Park, right across the street from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Westy Craft Brew Fest goes this Saturday, July 29th from 5 to 9 p.m. at City Park. And our next City Council study session is Monday, a week from today, 6:30 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. Next slide. We did have one information-only item that was on Westminster quiet zones, the remaining zones, and then, really where those need to be hit and how we will address those moving forward. It's really, they're very, very expensive, as you all know, to make those changes. And so as we apply for grant funding and city funding becomes available, we'll certainly be able to address those in the years to come. But I talked with Community Development Director Downing today about as we look at our 5-year work plan this fall, let's start to pin the rose on when we're going to do those moving forward. And so that's kind of our update. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Next slide. And as always, again, transparency is something that we're focused on. The city wants to be accessible. We want to be responsive. We want to certainly be transparent and most of all accountable. If you want to get in contact with us, please call my office, 303-658-2006. You can email me directly at mfreitag@cityofwestminster.us. You can follow us on follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, check us out on Instagram, or ring our bell at next door. And I did have an update for Mr. Palmer. Swim and Fitness, contractor is on site. Demo permit has been released, awaiting the building permit. Project continues to move forward. Okay? So, pending any questions, that's all I have this evening.
Any questions from council? Councilor Namella.
Yes, I want to just shout out to the aquatics team. It's pretty awesome. The Strong Communities grant that DOLA is, I think it's accepting applications right now or very soon. And I would just encourage us to look into whether or not that could cover things like quiet zones and or undergrounding utilities.
We'll certainly take a look at that. Thank you, Counselor.
I see no other questions.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That brings us to city council comments. Councilor Azadi?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to give some praise and recognition to the Human Services Board. So I'm the council liaison to Human Services Board. It's a board of about 6 people, and we have a staff liaison, Mr. Parlow. The process started in April of this year, where we are a grant giving board. So we have about $130,000 that we have just finalized the recommendations that will be coming to City Council August 15th. The process was very efficient. It was a collaborative effort. I wanted to just give some praise to the members. So Katie Rusky, Lori Sanchez, Kathy Busby, Christine Geertz, Kathleen Dodaro, and Katie Hoying. They did a fantastic job working together, and we have about 27 organizations that are receiving $130,000 across food, health, mental health, housing, serving a lot of different populations like the food insecure population, low income population, people with MS, abused and neglected children, the disabled. It's just a really fantastic process, and I'm hoping that we can approve this on August 13th, and these organizations can benefit from that to serve Westminster residents. So thank you to the board.
Thank you. Councilor Baker?
Really, thank you, Mayor. At our last meeting, I made some statements that upset other council members. I was requested to back it up with facts. So let me begin. I made the statement on really July 10th to really try to address the wholly inaccurate comments that our mayor had made about Mrs. Karen Calavity's complaint. Ms. of the Calavity was really motivated to speak by really what she saw as a propaganda mailing by the city. Our mayor always begins public comment by really stating this is not meant to be a back and forth. So I was surprised when our mayor made her clarification of Ms. Calavity's remarks. I had thought the Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, in his comments immediately following the mayor's comments, was going to temper the mayor's remarks. Really, Mayor Pro Tem had made a vigorous defense of the public's rights to comment at our March 27th, 2023 meeting. So I thought he was going to really defend the Calavity's right to make of the remarks, but he did not. So then I spoke up to really mitigate in a general way the mayor's errors and asked council not to dismiss Ms. Calavity's remarks. Let me be exact in the errors that our mayor made. Well, a previous council had begun a condemnation action on the Westminster Boulevard property using eminent domain. It was this council that completed the taking. From our election in November of 2021 until really December of 2022, we had the power to end the eminent domain condemnation action, and we did not. From, receiving the price verdict in really December of 22 up to February of 2023, this council could have walked away and ended the taking by saying the price was too great. We did not. On really February 6th of 2023, when this council appealed the price verdict, this council used the city's power of eminent domain to take the property. To say anything else is wrong. The Calavity was really completely accurate. Next, the 4 site locations that were really presented at our January 23rd, 2023 meeting were the only 4 sites ever considered. And by considered, I mean a detailed plan with routes for raw water in, routes for finished water out, a plant layout, and the pricing of that alternative. And while our memories are really subject to various challenges,
The record is crystal clear. As published in the minutes of this council for really February 6th, 2023, City Council, for the City Council meeting, City staff's response to Mayor Pro Tem's questions about my message of the 5th of February saying why I would not vote for the appeal of the price, confirms that CDM, the provider of our reassessment, of our second opinion, did not reassess the Jacobs site selection. CDM only considered 3 alternate sites and the Westminster Boulevard site, and the alternate sites were Semper, the MSC, and the confidential alternate. We asked for a second opinion back in February of 2022 to take a completely new look at the Water 2025 plan. The first step in a second opinion, the most fundamental consideration, is what site to use. And we did not do that. Our second opinion did not do that. City Council paid about $750,000 for this second opinion, which I calculate should have purchased at least 3,000 hours of engineer time. And there should have been more than enough time to meaningfully reconsider other sites. CDM did not look at any other sites than the 4 presented on January 23rd, 2023, and furthermore, in an email from Manager Freitag dated February 10th, 2023, Manager Freitag clearly states CDM was under contract to of the complete design work for the larger water treatment plant that was really proposed with Water 2025. Their work was stopped in order to do a reevaluation of the project and to look at really specific options that had been identified as potential alternatives. They did not spend significant effort on evaluating the Jacobs study, as they were primarily focused on developing more in-depth evaluations of the 4 identified alternatives. Again, the Calavity was completely accurate. Now let's address the misinformation. I consider misinformation prepared by and reported to council from experienced, competent, authoritative individuals as lying. In the same February 6, 2023 council minutes, of the response answering my question about using the Westcliff sites, Manager Freitag confirms that only Jacobs, not CDM, considered the site. Manager Freitag then makes, the assertion that, to use Westcliff would require major roadway/bridge construction. This, assertion coming from very knowledgeable people frightened me. First, because it would mean that the suggestion was completely unworkable and ignorant. Secondly, for the enormous cost of building a road and bridge that would make this site more expensive than Westminster Boulevard. Then I relooked at the map. There is no roadway bridge needed to reach Westcliff. Westcliff access is by the same road as the Westminster Boulevard site, with the addition of a turn onto Westcliff Parkway. How could the city staff make such a gross error? Besides, the correctly identifying Westcliff Park, I had remarked in my question on using the abandoned Niver Canal to reach Semper and the high service pump stations, which gives another specific clue to where this location I was suggesting was located. After the February 6, 2023 City Council meeting, I pursued the misinformation and adds to claim of the required roadway bridge. Oh, sorry. At the February 6, 2023 City Council meeting, I pursued the Westcliff site misinformation farther. In Manager Freitag's February 10th email, he doubles down on the misinformation and adds to the claim of a really required roadway/bridge the risk of dangerous flooding of the bridge. I then pursued the response in person with Manager Freitag. I told Manager Freitag that the information was a lie and asked him to hear my evidence and investigate further. The response in an email dated March 23rd is like a mini version of Richard Nixon's Watergate cover-up. What he basically forwarded a map in which the Big Dry Creek open space is misidentified as Westcliff Park. This was the only way, the dishonest claims for a really required roadway bridge could be justified. Councillor Nurmela, I find the city staff making false claims, such as claiming, a requirement for a roadway bridge, to be misinformation. Sort of like the misinformation that was told to council at our January 23rd, 2023 meeting, that all 4 options for the planned water treatment plant were planned to last beyond 50 years. And then, in the February 6th email, the published one, Semper was said to last only 10 to 20 years. From your comments on July 10th, I guess you do not define these examples as misinformation. Mayor Pro Tem, I hope I have satisfied your needs for my comments to back it up with facts. So what can we do together to mitigate the damage and expense these outrageous lies given to council have cost our city? As I offered in my comments on March 27, 2023, I am ready, willing, and able to engage in discussions with my colleagues to make the best choices possible for our city. We cannot make best choices if we are given misinformation or are lied to. Elected officials, just like every other human, can be swindled. We should not be embarrassed to recognize we have been swindled, especially when it was done by our own staff. Thank you.
Councilor Azadi? Just wanted to follow up on that and say that staff is not disingenuous. They do not promote misinformation, and city manager is not a liar. So disregard all that. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I think perspective is always a thing that is interesting. And you talked about the map being mislabeled. I think that confused a couple of us, and it really showed when you're not talking about the same things, that's different than lying. I'll give you a little story, a little analogy. I heard a story about a man who passed a store that was a clock store every day. This man was responsible for blowing the starting and quitting whistle at a factory nearby that little town. Years after, the shop owner would see this man pass by, and he would always stop and he would adjust his watch. So the shop owner stopped and asked him, why do you always do that? And he says, well, because I'm responsible for blowing the quitting and starting whistle at the factory. And the shop owner, looking perplexed, looked at him and said, well, that's interesting, because I've been adjusting that big clock to the quitting and starting whistle. Point being is, who are we following and what is our point of origin? We often have people who, if you want to focus on the bad, as we've heard tonight, you're going to find bad. If you want to focus on the good, you will find some good. I don't think that any of what you're saying, you are taking things and often taking facts and pieces, you're putting your own perspective and view on it and calling it misinformation or maliciously lying, and that's not always the case. There are 6 other people up here who did not take the same takeaway that you did. So does that mean that we are ignorant, that we saw the same information, but we took the answer that we were given by staff and we said that makes sense and that is reasonable? So at some point, if you want to work with us, my point is you need to find a place where we can focus on actually wins and moving the city forward and stop looking in the past, when I would agree there is plenty in the past over my 5 years that I'm not happy with. But at some point, we have to decide, are we going to make the organization better? And that's what this council, since the election of 2021, has done. And there has been plenty of wins, in my opinion. You once told me, when we had a conversation over this very topic, that you and your wife have the conversation about how you believe that people need to meet you where you believe things. At some point, you're going to have to hear other people's perspective and meet them where they're at. Otherwise, we will continue down this path. You will continue to not understand where we're at and expect us to understand where you're at. And that obviously is not going anywhere.
Councilor Emmons?
Thank you. Councilor Baker, a couple months ago, you had asked for discussion, and I had responded and said, what discussion are we not having? And then we had a conversation. We weren't able to touch on the fact because I did say that, I find it odd that you're able to call out wrongs when we specifically have protocols, and I mentioned that you don't follow our protocols. And you had asked a very poignant question as far as, okay, well, show me or tell me how I'm not following protocols. I will say in our protocols, one of the very first items is that you often disagree with positions, and it states very clearly in our protocols that if you disagree, you need to state your position on why you're disagreeing. And you never, if rarely do. You always just say no, which, okay, that's a matter of opinion, and we move forward. The other one is keeping others informed and avoid surprises. You quite often go to the media and or write letters to the editor, and what I feel, and these are disingenuous, misinforming the public. It could be quite often your opinion, which it is, but you don't ever keep council informed that you're going to the media and you're going to write a letter to the editor and or call for attention to a certain subject, whatever we just went over. There is also our protocol of communicate in a genuine, direct, and candid and honest manner. I would say you are very genuine, you're very direct, and you're very candid, which I appreciate. The honesty and which I've taken note of is you only give part of the decision. You only give part of the facts, which then becomes disingenuous in the actual decision that was made. Because we all know in an eminent domain the entire reason why we moved forward the way we did. You're not sharing the entire picture, and I find that disingenuous. We've always said the majority moves things forward, and yet you continue to hold us back. I understand in the moment when you try to give your opinion and say, at the time that we are trying to vote on something, you very adamantly and candidly share your thoughts, which I appreciate and I listen to. At a matter of time, things need to move forward and not backward. And so I ask you, and it is written in our protocols, that you listen with an open mind and be willing to change your mind. Because that is what we are up here to do, is listen, learn, and take everything in to make the best decision forward for our residents and everyone in Westminster.
Thank you. That brings us to consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt consent agenda items 8A through 8B.
Councilor Seaman?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve items 8A and 8B. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demont?
Yes.
Counselor Emmons?
Yes.
Counselor Zadi?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Counselor Nermella?
Yes.
Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
Before we hit public hearings, I'm just checking with everybody. Are you okay? You need a break? We're good? 5 minutes. Yep, 5 minutes. I thought I just asked before we get started.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Okay, that brings us to public hearings. We have a public hearing and approval of the Second Amendment to the Preliminary Development Plan for Filing 1, 10-3 Plat, Block 17, Lot 25 and 26 of the Bradburn Subdivision Planned Unit Development. City Manager, do we have a presentation?
No presentation, Madam Mayor.
First, I will open the public hearing, and it is 8:02. Yep,
I got confused on which one we were on, so
Sorry.
there is a presentation.
I
I'm
thought so,
sorry.
but that's
My
okay.
apologies.
Okay.
Senior Planner, Stephanie Ashman.
Welcome. Doesn't sound like it.
I don't need to put it on you guys. Check, check. Sounds good. Thank you. All right, thank you very much this evening. Good evening, Council. My name's Stephanie Ashman. I'm a senior planner of the city's planning division. And tonight I'm here to present to you the application for the second amended Bradburn preliminary development plan. Next slide, please. As part of bringing this project before you, a staff agenda memo has been created and tonight's public hearing has been properly noticed. The agenda memo, its associated attachments, tonight's PowerPoint presentation, the public notice published in the Westminster window, the mailed notices, and the posted notice are hereby entered into the public record at this time. The notices of the public hearing were mailed to approximately 700 plus recipients, including businesses, residences, HOAs, and property owners within 1,000 feet of the parcel under consideration this evening. The city has also posted the hearing date and the time on its website. Next slide, please. So here is a vicinity map showing outlined in red lots 25 and 26. Lot 25 is addressed at 4188 Main Street. Lot 26 is directly located to the south and can be accessed by internal alleyways. And this is within the Bradburn preliminary development plan boundaries. Next slide, please. Per the Bradburn PDP, both properties are located within the designated commercial district, north of 118th. This district allows for commercial and business uses within the B1 and C1 list of allowed uses per the Westminster Municipal Code, along with residential. The PDP lists building types per district, and some of those building types include town office, 2 to 4 stories tall, town apartment, 2.5 to 4 stories tall, village office, 2 to 3 stories tall, village apartment, 2.5 to 3 stories tall, and townhouses that can be 2 to 3 stories tall. As you'll see out there, there's a pattern. The applicant is requesting 2 exceptions to the original PDP. The first exception is a request to increase the building height limit on lot 25 for the Main Street building from the 3 stories to 4 stories with a 5th story rooftop area. The second exception is to amend the land use mix table to increase the total unit count within the entire Bradburn subdivision from 793 units to 802. The current total number of constructed units within the Bradburn subdivision is 738. This request, if approved, would accomplish the applicant's goal of constructing 64 for-sale condominium units. With this proposed development and the previously constructed residence within Bradburn, the density does not exceed 7 dwelling units per acre, where 18 dwelling units per acre are allowed within the mixed-use neighborhood comp plan designation. Next slide, please. Section 11514 of the Westminster Municipal Code contains 10 criteria that are to be considered when reviewing preliminary development plan amendments. Staff finds the preliminary development plan amendment generally meets these criteria as outlined in the agenda memo. Several examples of these criteria are that the PDP is compatible and harmonious with existing public and private development in the surrounding area, streets, driveways, access points, and turning movements are designed in a safe and convenient manner that the PDP will not preclude, and that the PDP will not preclude future public land dedications. For those selected example criteria, staff finds that the PDP is compatible with the existing developments in the surrounding area, and that the access point is designed in a safe and convenient manner, and that the PDP will not preclude future land dedications. Next slide, please. Staff's recommendation is that the City Council approve the proposed preliminary development plan amendment put forth by the applicant. If approved, the applicant will advance to the official development plan review, which will go before City Council at a future date. Next slide, please. Staff finds that the recommendation of approval of the PDP amendment application would enable the city's strategic plan policy of preparedness and resilience, supporting the priority of building a system of intentional support for residences, businesses, and the environment that mitigates risks and proactively seeks out the ways to ensure the community not only endures but thrives. The recommendation of approval would also support the city's strategic plan priority of fostering a shared sense of community by creating equitable opportunities that help residents feel at home and live connected to their community and empowered to live their best lives. Additionally, a Planning Commission meeting was held last month on Tuesday, June 14th. Planning Commission voted 3-1 in favor of the PDP amendment. So that's my presentation for this evening. Thank you very much for your time. And I have several staff here to answer any other questions that you might have. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have right now, or we can have the applicant come up and do their presentation, whichever you'd like.
Let's just see if we have any quick questions. Councilor Namelo?
Yes, hi, Stephanie. Can you clarify, when you were going through the existing allowed uses and their heights within the PDP commercial area, you had one where it was multifamily that was up to 4 stories and another one with up to 3 stories. Can you just...
Can I tell the difference
Yeah.
between the two? What I noticed in the Bradburn PDP is that they split the building typologies between what they're calling town and village. But what I noticed is that under that list of the PDP, it states that all of these building types are allowed within the commercial district, which are all located north of 118th. So really what it comes down to is like the town office is more of an office building, not incorporating residential, which allowed up to the 4 stories in height. When it came to the town apartment, you know, it was the apartment version of the town category of the building typology. So from interpreting that on the PDP, I just took it as everything that was in that area of 118th and listed under that list of allowed uses or building types within the commercial center as what's allowed to be constructed in that area.
So one of there were 2 apartment categories. One was 4 stories and one was 3.
Correct, yeah. The town apartment goes from 2.5 to 4 stories tall, and the village apartment is 2.5 to 3.5 stories tall.
Okay, and both are allowed in the commercial, both building types are allowed in the commercial areas, so.
Yes.
Why are we
Why are you asking for this specific one? I can tell you. So within that list, there's it's called the Main Street building above retail, apartments above retail. It is kind of specific in this PDP, and so you kind of have to get into the nuances of that. And that one only goes up to 3 stories, okay? And so what they're asking for, because their use of what they're trying to accomplish in that building vertically is very similar to the Main Street building. So like the town apartment doesn't have a mixed use component, but the mixed use the Main Street building does. So it has retail on the ground floor with 2 stories on top of it of office or residential or combination of both. And what the applicant is proposing this evening, as identified within the agenda memo, is a vertically integrated mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor, 2 stories of residential, 1 story of office, and a rooftop restaurant, like outdoor restaurant. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. Yeah, there's got some nuance in there. Thank you.
Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Mayor. The thing I like about a comprehensive plan is not only is it a promise to the landowner, but it's a promise to the neighbors around them. When you then turn the comprehensive plan use designations into ODPs and PDPs, those promises are then cast in concrete, one could say. How would you answer the person that views the taller building as an adverse influence?
I would say that, as to your point, entitled and in concrete, that the time that a preliminary development plan is approved by City Council and acted upon, built, started construction to occur with following ODPs, that those documents entitle a 4-story building. At that time, that's what it says, that a 4-story is a height limit that can occur within the commercial district north of 118th. So if somebody would say to me, which we have heard from the residents of the area, that they are concerned about a 4-story building, my answer is that the PDP does entitle, and the ODP, both entitle 4-story buildings.
Then why are we asking for the exception?
The exception is the request from the developer before you this evening.
Well, generally, my understanding is if you ask for an exception, that must mean you're not entitled to it.
Oh, correct. You had asked for the 4-story, so that's my answer for you.
Okay. And isn't this in a very real sense a 5-story building? If it's got an outdoor restaurant on the 5th floor?
You know, how it was phrased, just to be continuous with what type of town office or the town apartment where it says 2.5 to 3.5, we stayed in line with what was consistent in the PDP as far as stories go. But yes, you can consider it to be a 5-story building constructed to appear onto the street as a 4-story building with a 5th story setback.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Namella?
I was just going to clarify, you kind of already clarified it, but so if they were to come in and just ask for, hey, we want to do a 4-story rental apartment project, they could on the site. It's only that they're, because of the mix of uses within this building is really why they're more classified in that other type of building.
Correct, yes. And they are asking for the additional units as well.
I see no other questions at this time.
Okay,
Oh,
thank
sorry.
you. I'll
Counselor-
go ahead and bring
My
up.
apologies.
Councilor
Please.
Seymour.
Sorry.
Late button. And I missed this because I'm reviewing some of the emails as well. What is the total parking set aside for this, and how is that going to be set up?
Yeah, if I can answer that for you, but the developer does have that included in that
Okay.
presentation, if that's okay with you.
That'd be fine. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. If you please come up. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Welcome.
Thanks. I'm Dan O'Brien, architect and planner with President's Design Group.
and I've been working on this site for a little while, trying to make sense of it. And really, it's there's two different things going on here. You know, you have the corner property at Bradburn in Maine, which is basically the center of the little Main Street commercial district that was planned for Bradburn. And so from a planner's point of view, that's an opportunity to kind of establish the core of that district. And the natural uses for that are commercial, because you're at the end of that little Main Street section from 120th down to, you know, this block. But the concept we have, it would be to mix commercial with some smaller scale residential units, the condominium units. So if you look at the PDP, you know, it allows a 4-story single-use commercial building and a 4-story single-use residential building. So that's kind of our starting point. And you could take what we have proposed and split it in half and say, okay, only, you know, this part's only going to be, you know, commercial, and this part's only going to be residential, and then there wouldn't be anything to talk about at all, right? But we think it's a better concept if it's mixed, you know, vertically. Because what you get out of that is you get more commercial space on the ground floor. And our intent is that ground floor becomes something like a collective eatery. So it's food and drink and a gathering place for people in the neighborhood. And then as we looked at the site and thought about the kind of broader context, we thought that to have a second gathering space up on top of the roof that would provide people a nice spot to you know, take in the view of the mountains, because that's going to be there pretty much indefinitely, that we could create two different spaces that bring something a little bit different to that downtown, you know, that Main Street area. They don't exist right now, that would be very much community spaces as well as a commercial enterprise. So that's the concept for that northern lot. Then the southern lot is, you know, kind of an odd lot, right? It has no street frontage, you know, so that one's a little bit of a challenge, but there's a concept that we have in mind that we think could turn that into some nice housing where it's a courtyard in the middle, and you create your frontage for the residential units onto the courtyard so that you have something desirable to look out at versus looking into the back of everybody's garages that are surrounding that lot right now, right? And that interior lot would be just limited to residential use, so you're not trying to mix that into the adjacent residential, plus it wouldn't be great exposure for commercial use anyway. So there's kind of the concept in a nutshell. So we can go to the next slide here. And that's, you see kind of a diagram, you know, for that concept there, where you have the rectangular block on top and the U-shaped block, you know, on the south lot there, and that's the courtyard in the middle. We can go to the next slide. This is really just the reiteration of the PDP documents in case we needed to reference it. So I think we can keep going here. So is this sheet. And this is the third sheet. So we can keep going there. This slide was just meant to provide a reference for the numbers for the use issue that were, well, it's not really use, the number of residential units. So this just gives you the summary of how many residential units are in the entire Bradburn development, you know, presently, how many have approved, and the increase of 9 units that we're asking for. And the reason for that is that all the residential units that we're thinking to do here would be smaller scale condominium type units so that they'd be ownership, but they'd be at a price point that would be different than what exists through much of that neighborhood now, so that it does allow for a broader mix, demographically, of people that can live there, and not be a rental unit. So, this next slide is really talking about that, and the term missing middle has become a very popular term these days. And it's really referring to market rate housing that is more moderately in cost. I've done work that's, quote, affordable housing, and in the past in different areas of Colorado, and that's a tough task, and not everybody can really qualify for that anyway, in terms of income levels. And so I view this concept of a missing middle and trying to develop housing forms that are kind of in between, quote, affordable housing and a lot of the market rate housing as very useful, because there's a lot of people that's kind of what they need, And in order to do that, given construction costs, they need to be smaller units, but that doesn't mean that they can't be nice, So that's why the concept of the courtyard is what we have in mind for that south lot, so that they're not residential units that are just kind of tucked off a back alley or something, that you might see in a larger city, and that the units in the lot 25 in the north, the majority of those would have street frontage, and then on the south side, they would have an open view to the south and could have exterior balconies, and they'd be pretty nice, I think. I think there's potential for that. We can go to the next slide. This little 3D model is just to help give some idea of the 4-story relative, if you're looking south from 120th, how that would appear relative to the existing buildings that are already there along the street. And you can also see that at the top there's a smaller block that's set back from the top. So it's very, very much intended to read as a 4-story building, but to try to create that opportunity for that rooftop space, for a second gathering space, we would set it back so that it does read as a 4-story building from most viewpoints, and set a limit on the size of what's on top there. It's nowhere near the full footprint of the building below, because it doesn't need to be. Mostly it's about creating rooftop space that when you have the nice weather, you can be up there and have the view out to the mountains, and then just have a smaller area to provide food and drink. Next slide. So this slide shows the intent at the ground level, or at the corner facing the intersection. The building would be pulled back from the street a little bit, so that there would also be a small exterior kind of patio plaza area there that would create a interface between indoor and outdoor, and kind of liven up the street too. You have the street side seating. Next slide. This one. So the image on top, is a 4-story building that's just it's a reference image, so that if you take the term that's in the PDP of town office or town apartment, a 4-story building, that's what they would look like, or many would look like that. And then the image below shows the model we have for our initial concept here, that shows that's 4 stories, and then again, you can see that partial 5th floor set back from the edge of the building there. You can go to the next slide. And these 2 images are meant to represent the 2 kind of gathering spaces. So the lower one is just representative of a collaborative eatery, food hall kind of concept that would be at the ground level. And the upper image is, rooftop food and drink with a view to the mountains. So that's just to kind of explain what we think could happen there. That I really think is it's both commercial enterprise and amenity, for the neighborhood. That's how I look at it as a planner. And I think that's all we have here.
Any questions at this time? Councilor Mella?
Hi.
Hi.
So it's a pretty ambitious project.
Relative to what exists there now, but I think it's that 1 block Main Street section that was done here doesn't it's not a lot really as a neighborhood center, so it seems to me that the addition of something like this creates a little more of a center of gravity, for the neighborhood. And the commercial uses are obviously spilling off to the west side a little bit here, along Main Street there. But this could help, reestablish the other street, coming up to 120th as a center of activity, for the neighborhood.
Right. I think the commercial use at the ground level is really key in establishing the 4 corners of the retail in Bradburn. Just had a few questions. One, the rooftop area, how much square footage approximately? Is it more of like an elevator in a very small area?
You'd need enough space to be able to just prepare food and drink, and so that would depend on what you did for a menu.
So it's kind of there will be a kitchen up there, so it's a standalone restaurant.
Yeah, just so that it's it's a nicer experience if you were to do something like that.
Okay.
We're thinking it's probably more of a fine dining kind of arrangement, but you kind of need it to be semi-casual too, so that it's comfortable for everybody to use.
And the ground floor, you have about half the building along Main Street would be essentially just a blank wall. East of the commercial market hall, it's because it's where the parking is at the ground level.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a blank wall. The east end of that block would be parking, and then the west half would be the food hall, and so that would run around the corner, on the west side. Mm-hmm. And on the east end where the parking is, we work from Westminster standards for screening parking and providing landscaping and creating a nice streetscape there. There's some very nice trees all along that block right now. So that's already creates a good head start in terms of creating a nice, experience in terms of for somebody to walk, along there.
So the building doesn't extend all the way to the edge of, can you go back to?
It extends down to the alley to the east.
It does. So the building's above. So you have parking below and the buildings?
At the ground level, there's parking, and then the residential units would be at the 2nd and 3rd level.
Okay, and ostensibly you'd have some sort of building wall to screen the parking.
Yeah. But it'd be a partial height wall, and then it would be open, and then there'd be landscaping. So you're using several elements to screen the parking and to integrate that ground floor into the building design.
Interesting. Okay.
There's a series of columns that would run across there too, so it looks like the rest of the building. It's just instead of a window being there, it's an opening.
Okay, I'm sure our planners will work it
Yeah,
out.
I mean, that would be,
What the best design is. And then what is the experience of this group doing a building like this?
it varies. You know, my experience is pretty broad.
Oh, I mean financing and executing.
And then, yeah, on the development side, we've worked together on some work over in Arista. There's a 13-unit live work development there that we did several years ago, actually. That's just kind of northwest of the little Main Street section there, and that's been occupied. I don't know, what, 10 years now, John? About 15 years. Is it 15? Yeah. And then there's background and a variety of other both commercial and residential kinds of properties.
Right, I'm seeing some industrial as well as single-family custom homes
Yeah.
done by the developer, but not a mixed-use building to this nature.
The lived work units would be the closest in terms of a mix of uses. That has some retail on the ground level and residential above, and also some office space mixed in those units as well.
And, sorry, just trying to understand this building a little bit more and just where so it's retail at the ground floor, office second floor, and 2 stories of residential above?
No, it's the office would be 4th level. On the west half of the building, the 2nd and 3rd floor are residential units, and then the east half of the 4th floor would also be residential units.
Okay, and then on lot 26, that's proposed to be 2 or 3 stories?
3.
3 stories.
So it'd be the same height as most of those townhomes that surround it.
And it looks like not covered parking for those?
There's a combination of covered parking and on-grade parking that's anticipated for that lot. Because the alley system on that lot runs, it loops the whole lot, and that has to remain in place. That's a access easement that exists already, and that it would also be, access for emergency vehicles and all that kind of stuff. So the planning for that lot gets a little bit tricky, but we have a specific plan in mind, assuming this moves forward and we go to the ODP phase here.
Okay, and you can still, the program for the building, is it dependent on having that office use?
The building on the
mixed-use building
on lot 25? Yes, we would like to have some office use there.
Okay. All right. That's it for now, thanks.
Councillor Seymour?
Thank you. Questions on parking and dedicated parking. So we have 64 units in total, but we have a split between the 2 buildings. Do you have a number for the dedicated parking on 25 and 26 for residents and office?
Yeah, we're working from Westminster's normal parking standards for the different uses, and that's what we would be
Can some
proposing.
update me even from planning what it is, if this is different here from
Some of the other
from
districts.
our other districts? So I don't know if Bradburn is different on parking or what we have for an allotment, if our planning people could speak to that. Yes, please.
So we use the Westminster Municipal Code for the residential parking. And then in Bradburn itself, we use the traditional mixed-use neighborhood district guidelines and standards. They do allow guest on-street parking to be directly adjacent to the lot in which the development is occurring. So lot 25 has 2 frontages, and they can utilize the on-street parking that's provided along those 2 frontages. So that's how Bradburn is different. The team on standards are different from the Westminster Municipal Code parking standards. when it relates to commercial. It also discusses that there could be a shared parking agreement across the entire Bradburn area to be able to offset some of those uses, different times of the day, different types of uses across the commercial area. And a parking study is to be provided at time of ODP that shows how it conforms to the original parking study that was provided when Bradburn was approved.
Okay, then my question of the applicant, will there be at least 128 dedicated spaces in this, between these two lots?
Let me introduce part of the development team, Jonathan Nasser.
Thank you.
Good evening. How are you?
Excellent, thank you.
Jonathan Nasser, I am the developer for 4188 and Lot 26. Thank you for your time tonight. I should also point out that I live in Bradburn Village as well. So my background's development, Park City, Utah, Steamboat Springs. Dan talked about the Arista Live Work project as well, 13 units, about 55,000 feet. Right now, we are providing 109 parking spots. The development as a whole requires a total of 135 required, and we're also using some street parking as well. So we're really have a deficit of 9 parking spots, which in the end we need 126 to load not just the retail and commercial, but also 64 micro condos as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And what will happen is that as we, if we take the next step here and we have to provide, we'll be providing more detail on this issue. We'll be looking at the number and types of units and making an assessment of what's needed for the parking there, looking at the commercial space and providing the ratio that's needed there. And basically our relief valve is that, if physically we're coming up short on space for parking spaces, we may have to make an adjustment in the number of units. That's how it'll play out.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. And you may, if you don't know this at this point, that's okay, but I'm curious because you talked about cost. So two components of cost I'm curious about is what the target price range is going to be for these units. And then the second part of it is, since this is kind of a unique when there's a mix, typically in a condo, you'd probably see an HOA. So if there's an HOA, how does everybody that's in the building participate in that, since some will be residential and some will not?
Yeah, great question. So at this point, our costs, we want to really, the goal here is to really provide attainable housing. I know Westminster calls it missing middle, but it's really attainable housing in the 300s. So we're probably 600 to 800 square feet per unit, 64 units in the 300s, which we think a community, something like Bradburn Village, certainly welcomes 64 units that allow people to walk. It's pedestrian friendly, walk to restaurants, walk to bars, as you very well know. And they're also bought into the actual concept of urban living as well. We do have an HOA out there today that has a master HOA and a minor HOA as well. And we are assuming that HOA will also manage the mixed-use building as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Could I also, what Sarah talked about earlier, I think what's important, the vision here is really the main floor retail, that component between Bradburn Boulevard and Main Street. We want that Denver Central Market. So we want it really to activate the site. We want a coffee shop, a couple bars maybe, or one bar concept, a couple restaurants as well. On the second, third floor, we're looking at micro condos, and the fourth floor will be commercial as well. Then the building that actually parallels Main Street, we're looking at tuck under parking, which you asked about, Sarah, and also second, third, fourth floor is micro condos as well. So that's the program today. And again, we require roughly 126 parking spots. We're short 9 today, and we're asking 9 dwellings above what's allowed today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Baker?
So this building's going to be about 70 feet tall, because you have a food hall that seems to be 16, 18 feet tall, then a couple 12-foot, then 3 12-foot layers. And then the 5th floor, you're going to have an elevator shaft. you're going to have restrooms.
No, it wouldn't be 70. You'd be
About 52 to 55 feet
Yeah.
tall, from ground
50
to ground.
plus, and then the rooftop piece would add another 9 to 10 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're expecting roughly 12 foot of volume in the main floor. Also, these small footprint micro condos, we want volume as well, so probably 9 to 11 feet as well, given how small the dwellings are.
Councilor Emmons?
Thank you. This question is probably more towards staff, but can you remind me what the average height is for surrounding buildings? I think you said it earlier, but I was taking notes.
Excuse me.
Sure, sorry.
Yes, I can do that for you. So there's the Beazer townhomes directly to the east. Those are 2 stories. The Bradburn row houses east of Beazer are 3 stories, so that's just on the other side of the street. There's a commercial building. The commercial buildings out there that I looked on the ODPs are 24 feet tall with parapet. Office building to the northwest, that nice 2-story office building on the corner, that's 2 stories. The live work to the west of these lots, 3 stories. Townhouses to the south are 3 stories, and the former Noah's is 2 to 3.5 stories.
Okay. And then obviously any development that comes forward, we have to ask for our resources, and I'm sure that staff has looked at water capacity and that we are able to meet that if this moves forward.
Correct, yes, it's been accounted for in the 2040 comprehensive plan. And additionally, the Bradburn neighborhood is allowed to have an R18 density and is currently built out at 7. So it's substantially under what it was projected to be built out at the time that it was given the land use designation, which was then revisited with the 2040 comp plan.
Okay. I know that there was a note saying that if this will max out, in the staff report, this will max out what's allowed. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
PDP established total number of units. It was very specific, right? It said you can have this many units above 118th, this many below 118th. And so by developing out this lot and the lot behind it and adding those additional 9 units, essentially max out what was on that originally approved PDP.
For that location.
For that location, well, for the Bradburn subdivision itself,
Okay.
because we looked at it as a total.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Since you probably have the answer, with rooftops, I know of only one other rooftop we have, and I know we've had issues with the neighboring neighbors. Do we have hours set for rooftops, or do we wait and see what happens and then do things?
Well, we don't have established hours of operation for rooftop uses within the Westminster Municipal Code. We don't. So essentially, allowing the rooftop unit, they would, well, I would rather get you the accurate information on what that could be. Okay. It could be something that we might be able to set up in the ODP, but I would like to get further clarification for you on that before I go too far.
And maybe check with the other rooftop we have. I just know
Oh, that's a good idea.
they've worked with the neighborhood and whatnot, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head, so.
I can definitely follow up for you on
Perfect,
that. Yeah.
perfect. Counselor Namella?
So Councilor Evans just made me have this, think about this question. With maxing out the number of units in Bradburn subdivision, does that impact the development that would be west of Tennyson? I know there were contemplated to be more townhomes and some affordable housing that would be behind Noah's, actually east of Tennyson, and then townhomes west of Tennyson.
If we could go back to a slide, I could probably show on the vicinity map, it's
Yeah.
shown that lot that you're talking about. It's specifically the last vacant lot within Bradburn. I think is what you're talking about, within the Bradburn boundary. So it's on my slide, it's on my presentation, and it's the vicinity map, which is probably the third slide. There you go. So you can see it in this. You see Noah's directly to the west, and then right behind that is that vacant lot.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the lot you're referencing?
That one, and then there's another one west of Tennyson.
So the one that's west of Tennyson is not within the Bradburn preliminary development plan, that's within the 3M. And that is still proceeding as far as I know.
Okay. What about the site that's right behind Noah's?
So this site, the one that you're the one that you were talking about, where I'm thinking you're referencing the affordable housing component. So that was approved, or that was a condition that was added in addition to the allowed units on the PDP. So it was a condition of approval on the official development plan. And so we did the research on that, and that's what we saw is how it was approved was in addition to the total units that were established within that table that's on the attachment, on the PDP attachment that was provided in your agenda memo.
So those, I think it was like 24, 25 units.
Yes, 25 for purchase. So see the official development plan. Shall also include 25 for purchase residences selling for a maximum of $170,000 after application for public subsidies, grants, or similar funds. And I have Molly Tayer here with housing. She can speak to that a little bit further if you'd like to have some more questions answered about that parcel.
Well, as long as this doesn't preclude that component of the project being fulfilled, although the price tag on the units might actually preclude it. But
our interpretation of that is that it does not, because it was approved on the ODP as a condition in addition to. So the PDP, the council approved that number of units, right, the established, which was originally 802, and then it was brought down because it wasn't fully developed out, which is also in the table that you were provided, and then now the applicant's asking to raise it to 802. So that was approved, settled, right? Then the ODP came forward, and then council approved it with a condition to add these 25 units in addition.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't think it's relevant for tonight, but if we could get an update on that, because I know there was some action taken on that particular one in the past, so if that's something that we could have a follow-up on, because I don't think it's important for tonight, but since we talked about it, I would be curious to know where we're at.
Sure, we can provide that for you. I do understand that that they are kind of lining up to get into a pre-application process on that parcel.
I see no more questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do we have any citizens signed up?
We have two people signed up for public comment. Eric, oh boy, Goodzate.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think it's past my bedtime.
Oh, sorry.
Whew. Well, thank you for staying up late and listening. I live, Eric Goodsite. I'm also the president on the Townhome HOA, and I don't think, that's a big question whether or not we can't even get enough people to vote, and it would require a 2/3 majority. So I don't think they'll be part of ours with this. But as a homeowner and as a board member, I'm really concerned, and I live directly east. So if you, I'm in a 2-story that goes down to a 1-story detached garage that would look up to a 5-story building. And based on the setback, it doesn't look like much setback. It looks like it's going to be a really big damn building that's coming in. And so I think one of the main themes would be just because you can doesn't mean you should. On this, the whole Bradburn community is pretty similar in its design, and this thing is some grotesque, big, huge monolith building that is going to come in and is really out of character for this community. The only tallest building in there would be the church with the steeple. That might be taller than this building that's coming in potentially. But I just think that this, 3-story is good. 4, I mean, I understand you could do it, but that's just really out of proportion. And oh, by the way, Noah's is not 2 to 3 stories. Noah's and it's not Noah's, it's called the Establishment. It's a 1-story building. It's not 2 to 3 stories. So, so my vote would be, if I had to vote, I would not approve anything higher, than definitely not 5 stories, and 4 I think is way too over the top on this. The whole area is really too dense with this. As one who lives there, people have this pie in the sky that everybody's going to be walking everywhere. If you've ever driven Bradburn, and based on the Planning Commission meeting, we heard that the streets were designed to be narrow to keep traffic at a slower pace. And that doesn't really work, but we have narrow streets. So we have a choke point coming in off of 120th on there, and we have a 4-way stop at this intersection. So we're really packing a lot into this area. You have the Goddard School, you have the church, you have the Early Bird, you have a vacant Dugan's, you have the apartments which use Main Street as a speedway. You obviously have the Establishment, you have the liquor store, you have Fuzzy's, you have 5280, you have Whole Foods. And then you have these 2 other vacant lots. And then if you were to talk about revitalization, that whole other thing off to the west where the Fox and the Hound and all of that, available retail space, there's a lot of stuff. And I think the question on parking is a valid issue because I don't see where these people are going to park. I just, I have this 20-foot alley and we're going to add hundreds of people to this. They're nice pictures which show lots of people, but no cars parked along Main Street. So you have them with retail competing against all of these other businesses. And I just don't understand where everybody is going to park, because you're going to have retail and you're going to have employees, you're going to have customers. You're going to have probably 2 people per condo. So you're going to have those cars. Then you're going to have office space, and you're going to have, where are they going to park? And then you have the patrons for the restaurant. Where are they going to park? And so we have a hard enough time with people at the Goddard School who park in the alley to drop off their kids right behind my garage door. So, this is going to be a mess, I think, just in general. And also the issue of traffic, 118th is a mess with the academy. And at the planning meeting, the city expressed folks, disappointment at how it didn't turn out as planned. I've walked through there. I walked that way. And where it comes in off a Lowell off 120th and it's all backed up and you see all the traffic coming across 118th, then at the end of the day, 118th to Bradburn Boulevard is blocked for about 45 minutes to an hour as everybody's trying to exit through this area to 120th. So there's a lot of traffic that's coming through here, and I just hope that people really understand, because the bottom line is I have to live here. This is my house. This is my neighborhood, and I think it's really ridiculous. And then we throw in snow removal, and how they do snow removal right now, currently, they shovel it all from the commercial side HOA into this vacant area. And it's not uncommon to have a huge mound at the intersection here where it's down to 1 lane. And then on 118th, on the south side of the road, the ice forms all winter. And so the cars start edging out into the street. And so it's hard to get 2 cars to pass.
Sir, your time is up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tamala Venard.
Welcome.
I'm Tamala Vennard. I'm a resident and I live with Eric, so I'm the first townhome directly east of this proposed building. And, sorry, I hope I can get through this. I have lived there for 16 years. When I moved in, I was told that they were going to be building 3-story work-life $1 million condos. And then we hit the recession in 2008. Everything since then has been discussed as 3 stories, work life, live, whatever. Sorry, I'm very upset, so I'm very nervous. I think it was interesting, the comment that there is going to be an inside courtyard so people don't have to look at garages. But we have to look at a 5-story building or a 4-story building with a patio. We will lose our sun. Definitely in the winter, we will have no sun. We will lose some of it in the summer. The parking, trying to get out of our alley when Goddard is in school is a nightmare as it is. With the church, that can be a nightmare with parking. This area, I think this is a beautiful proposal. I think this would be perfect for south of Whole Foods, not in this spot. The street between Main Street and 120th is not even a full block. So we've got a 4-way stop. We have a partial block going to 120th. And then we have all of these cars with the schools, the church, the restaurants that are there. And I am for something. I'm not happy with an empty field that has 5.5-foot weeds. Right now, has not been mowed since the new owners have purchased it. I welcome something there. It's also an off-leash dog park, which creates a lot of problems. But I'd just like it to be harmonious with Bradburn. I'd like it to be fitting and aesthetically pleasing with Bradburn. This to me looks like a hotel or a medical office building. And if you look at, I don't believe it's on this presentation, but something that we printed out, here's the 4 or 5 stories. Here's our entire row of 2 stories. And the only thing that separates us between this and this building is the alley. If you go then to the other side, the east side, we have the apartments, which are 3 stories, but we have an entire street. We have Quitman, we have trees, we have an island, and it doesn't feel like a skyscraper. To me, this feels like a skyscraper. And my neighbors thought I was crazy for coming here tonight because they said it's already a done deal. Absolutely, it's a done deal. Something needs to be built there. But I ask for you to vote with compassion and a conscience that you do not allow 4 or 5 stories and that you keep our residents and our schools safe. This is not downtown Denver. This is not downtown Westminster. This is a little suburb where I bought to retire for the rest of my life in. Forgive me for crying, but I'm very, very upset. And I just would like to see it go back to a 3-story. I don't know. I'd like somebody to look at the ODP or PDP or whatever it's called. Forgive me if I don't know the acronyms. From when the development started, 2002, 2003, 2004, in that time frame. I purchased in 2007. Thank you for hearing me, and please, please, don't let us be defeated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final person who's signed up to speak.
Anything else from staff?
I would like to speak.
Attorney Frankel?
It's a public hearing.
Need the microphone. We're sharing tonight.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave Frankel, City Attorney. I'll not speak too closely to the mic. It's sensitive. Just to understand, the sign-up sheet, I understand, was the terminal out in the lobby in the atrium available for members of the public to place their names onto the list to testify on this item tonight. And if council, having heard now presentations from the applicant, from staff, and from members of the public, if council wishes to invite additional testimony, certainly can. Based on the evidence that's been presented, it's entirely within your discretion to invite additional comment. So I'll say that is an option available to City Council.
What is the wishes of council?
I'm more than happy to allow additional comment since we have time.
Okay. Councilor Baker?
Roy, let him speak.
Councilor Emmons?
I hesitate because, Mr. Palmer, you know the process of this. You know there was a public hearing. I am for you having your voice heard, but I would encourage you in the future to sign up when everybody else signs up.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Give him his 5 minutes.
Councilor Numella?
Yeah, that's fine.
Councilor Zadi? Mr. Palmer? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me this. I don't know how this is different than public comments during the meeting when people can stand up. I wasn't going to speak, but after I saw something that was presented, I felt the need to speak. So if I could get the city to go back to their slide number 1 with the picture of the notification, please. There you go. Now you notice on the right side of that picture there, you'll see the signs are what, white? We had yellow, we've got baby poop brown. Since 2021, we've been using that standard blue sign. I feel that this deception that Public Works is causing now with having all these different colored signs is causing confusion with the public. Public doesn't know what a white sign is. They're used to that blue sign that we've had for years now. It's just like a stop sign's red with white writing. There's no deviation there. School signs, yellow, rock writing. But here again, we're trying to deceive the public, confuse them by continually changing the colors of these signs. Now, I've brought this to the attention of City Manager's office last week. We need clarification. Are we going to have whatever color signs the people want? Or are we going to stick with the standard blue one that we have had since 2021 that people know and recognize? This is deceitful, that we can't get on the same page of what sign represents a project with this city. I don't really have a problem with this project. What I have a problem with is this signage. It's causing confusion. Does any of this make sense to any of you people? I should hope so, because like I say, it's wrong and it's deceitful that the planning department is continually doing this, trying to confuse and deceive the people as to what hearings are coming forward. It needs to be one color, same color it's been since 2021. Why did it change in the last 60 days to where it's yellow, baby poop brown, white? Where's the consistency? I say that because I've had people ask me or call me about this. They don't see, what's this new yellow sign? What's that about? Are we getting a new hamburger joint? Because they're used to seeing city developments with that blue sign. That meant something. This means nothing, these random colors of signs. We need to go back to one color for all signs, for all meetings. Let's stop the confusion. It's not right.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any further comments, Mayor Pro Tem?
I just would like to ask a question. I don't know if it's for the city attorney or staff, but I don't believe that our code or our charter defines the color of signs. Can we get a clarification for that?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. No, it does not. The test really is substantial compliance, and here we have a sign that I believe is depicted as a white background with black type of the size mandated by the code. So it certainly appears that the sign would have complied with the code requirements.
Great, thank you very much.
Councilor Namella?
I had a one or two extra questions. Is now time to ask?
Yep.
And thanks, I also had that question. So, the PDP, Ms. Ashman, for Bradburn, what did it call out? I know it identified this area as as the commercial area. Was there anything specific to this corner that was discussed or envisioned?
Point of
Not
order.
specific.
Councilor
Madam Mayor.
Namella, I need to close the public hearing.
And I think there was a gentleman that raised his hand, one of the developers that I think wanted to speak as part of the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, please.
Sorry, I did not see a hand.
But we do need.
Thanks. Yep.
When all the speakers are done, we need to do the closure.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, City Manager. Last but not least, I certainly understand my neighbor's concerns. I very much do. I appreciate her concerns, and we certainly acknowledge it. I will say also to be proactive in a neighborhood where I live, and I've had homes here since 2001. I think I know Bradburn pretty well. So what I've done, just to get a good feel of the community and what they feel about this project, I have talked to 55 individuals over the last 2 weeks. And of those 55, 50 signed this petition. Again, nothing formal, not binding, just to get their feedback and also solicit their feedback on uses as well. Some quotes I have are as follows. This would be a great addition to the community. Equity improvement. Ideal for Bradburn. Rooftop sounds great. All for it. We need this. This is why we moved here. Let's do it. Love it. More retail is great. So of the 50 people I did speak to, 55, 50 have signed their name and address and comments. All 50 were for, not against. Okay, so we will no doubt be mindful with our neighbors. Again, I live here to make sure we're being very prudent on how we build and develop this lot. But I also want to remind those who came here tonight who live in Bradburn, you bought into this concept of urban living, right? Maybe you don't like Denver, high density. Maybe you don't like suburbia, but Bradburn has done a great job balancing those two concepts. And I think it's very important to note that it is pedestrian friendly, it is walkable, a lot of restaurants and bars, but that's what Bradburn was intended to be in 2002. So I would like to enter this as public record, if I may, to get the feedback not from me, but from my neighbors, of which a lot of these folks I do not know.
You can give it to the city clerk. Thank you. And with that, it is 9:09, and I'll close the public hearing. And Councilor Namella, sorry.
No worries, thank you. Oh.
Normally, we just allow one person, one time.
But it's the developer. What about a resident? The developer got to go again.
Excuse me, it is proper for the people that are doing this process to be able to speak. And I have closed public hearing, so it is now time to ask our questions. Councilor Namella?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Ms. Ashman, sorry if you would be willing to come back up and, so the question was, is there anything specifically identified outside of just the commercial designation for this corner on the PDP?
Not for this corner specifically, no.
Okay. So the 3-story building that we've heard about being expressed to property owners and other, I've also heard of 3 stories in the past, so that was just something that was more part of the vision, not necessarily in code, or in the zoning.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we do get a lot of questions from developers, people interested in the property prior to the applicant requesting and asking questions, what's allowed on this, proposing some ideas. Nothing that I believe has actually come through a pre-application review process.
Okay, and there's no description in the PDP.
Yeah, there's the description in the PDP, and that is listed as an allowable use on this lot.
Okay. Question regarding the concept. I know that Bradburn has specific design standards. Would the design standards be applied through the ODP process, not this PDP process?
Yes, at the time of the formal ODP submittal, we would ensure that the building, the site plan, is in conformance with all the applicable standards set forth in the master ODP and the corresponding traditional mixed-use neighborhood design standards and guidelines.
Right. Okay. But there's a separate Bradburn design guidelines.
There is, yes, yeah. Within the master ODP, it's pretty extensive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because, it looked like the design was not
Yeah,
necessarily in keeping with it, but.
Yeah, when it comes in for ODP, we'll have the opportunity to review it.
Okay. And then was there a public meeting held for this?
There was a public meeting held for this, yes.
And did they, what was the, I'm not remembering.
Similar to what you're hearing this evening, concerned about the height, about traffic and parking.
And approximately how many people attended that?
It was a virtual meeting. I'd say about 5 people attended.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem?
And I know you went over this, so I apologize for re-asking, but during the public comment, they talked about height. And if I understood correctly in the presentation, 4 stories is already allowed. Because I heard the comments that 4 or 5 were too much, but with no changes, they could do a 4-story building today. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so then I guess trying to understand, and I'm not a planner, nor would you ever want me to build anything for you, but when they do kind of the setback of that 5th floor, is that partially to help accommodate, what that's going to do to the surrounding area? I don't know what they do in terms of like shade and sunlight when it comes to building. Is that something that you take into account? Does the code take into account that? Do developers take into account that?
Yeah, in our standards and just in good planning practice, we like to take a look at solar orientation and the impacts of that. And yes, a tall building will have an impact on the solar orientation that is adjacent to these parcels. And so it's something that we will look at. I think, the 5th story being set back will do something that, possibly reduces that, but we haven't had the opportunity to really look at that.
Kind of next phase.
Yeah.
So then and that's good to know, the other part of it that was brought up in public comment that I would assume would still be addressed is snow removal. I assume that, they use that lot now because it's available, but I assume that our rules wouldn't allow them to, block the street with snow if avoidable. Obviously sometimes we get too much snow and they got to put it somewhere, but I assume that would be taken into account once there's an actual building there.
Yeah, so proper site planning leads us to be able to provide spaces left for snow storage, essentially. Being that it is Colorado, it is something that we do take into consideration when designing these spaces, especially when it does come to alleys. It can be tricky when you're trying to, design a site, especially when that's an infill site such as this one, to really define where those areas can be, but it is something that we work towards doing when we are evaluating site plans, along with, other sorts of trash collection services, postal service delivery, package delivery, things like that.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Numella?
I know. So many questions. What was my question? I didn't write it down, so sadly. If we were to, is it possible to ask for a greater setback from, because one of the things that I noticed from just the drawings was, even before anyone commented on it, was just how big the building is adjacent to the two-story townhomes. Is it possible to ask for a greater setback, even of the fourth story, from the adjacent development?
So the ODP establishes the design standards that talk about what those step backs are on the building itself, if you're talking about going vertically and doing step backs per story. And then it also establishes setbacks. So, as far as when we bring the ODP forward, that's something that, we will review it against and something that you can consider. If that question was for Mr. Frankel to answer, though, I'll leave that to him too.
Yeah, I think it's because I don't want to, if that is something that we consider, I wouldn't want to leave it to the ODP to remember that.
Yep.
Agree with Ms. Ashman. I believe the ODP would be the time for the site planning specifics and setbacks to be addressed. I think that the PDP amendment that is being requested today is addressing the unit count and the height, if I'm not mistaken. So I think those are the questions before City Council tonight, and that there will be a future ODP coming forward, at which time you can look at more specific design issues of the project.
Yes, that's correct.
With respect to this allowance for 3.5 stories, is that height, or is that you could go 3 stories and then you can go half of for half the building area, another story?
So the height of the floor to floor is not established in the ODP. So typically when stories are put onto an ODP or a PDP, it's because people don't think in feet, right? They don't think, okay, this is a commercial ground floor at 14 feet to 16 feet because I need that large glass. Us crazy people do that, right? That's what we do. So essentially, though, what they do is how the PDP gives those stories is to help people perceive what the perception is at the street level, right? So the street level of a person standing is why we say, okay, this is 1 story versus 2 story versus 3 story, and having the step backs and the fenestration and the standards associated with that is to be able to help give that street presence or that street wall that you try and create when placemaking in a place like Bradburn.
How would we employ a 3.5 story limit? Would that be, you can do a pitched roof on, what is 3.5 stories?
We could establish that on the ODP for what we think is appropriate contextually for the area.
So there's room to say three full stories and 1/2 of a building footprint? If you're at three full stories and then the top story is only half of the building area. I'm trying to understand how we would, with this 2.5 to 3.5 story.
Yeah, how you could put it into a form standard.
How would you?
Yeah. I think that's something that we can analyze at the time, but it could be, let's say if we establish a certain story, like let's say we take the commercial ground floor and we say that's going to be 14 feet, just saying, okay? And then the additional stories above that being the residential piece and just pulling from what the applicant said, let's say 9 stories or 9 feet. Then you could take the average between the two, or you can say, I might take the average between the two for that half story on the top. I think it's something that we can analyze at the time that it comes in, when we're taking a look at massing studies and the form itself on what's being created. It's a little difficult to answer that, I think, at this moment, because we really haven't had the full opportunity to review the architecture in the ODP.
Yeah, it's just important for me to understand if 3.5 stories is judged to be implemented in a way where it's literally like 3.5 building area stories going up, or if it's judged to be established by some setback or the vagueness of. This matters because of the height that we're trying to understand.
So if you're trying to understand that fifth story, that floor area is a percentage of the other floors and what that percentage could be on that top level, as a half or reduced step back, so that has a lesser appearance to the street level or to the street. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, because 3.5 could certainly be construed as allowing for some additional building area for a fourth floor.
Yeah.
Versus, what are we trying to say, 4.5 stories here, or, yeah, so.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. I'm thinking what would be a good way to handle that. Again, for me to be able to analyze it and give you a suitable answer, I would say, would be something to be looked at the ODP because of the area of the building to be determined. The PDP is just very basic in showing, generally this is where this building is going to be. Generally, this is the form it might take in, a block, like just a very basic representation, right? We're looking at access. We're not necessarily getting to the point of that. I do understand completely what you're saying. And at the time of ODP, we'll pay great attention to giving that a lot of thought for what that form looks like on the fifth story, the 4.5, technically 5 stories for when it does come in before you to review and give either approval or denial on.
Can you clarify, what are we technically being asked? 4 stories or 4.5 stories?
4.5, because 4 is allowed. So 4.5 is what's being requested for the Main Street building.
Okay, thank you.
I see no more questions, so thank you. That brings us to item A2. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the second amended preliminary development plan for filing 1/10th replat, Block 17, Lot 25 and Lot 26 of the Bradburn subdivision plan unit development.
Councilor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item A2. Is there any further discussion? Mayor, or Councilor Numella?
Is it possible to propose something different? Not for this one, but I don't know. Am I too late to propose something different than the current?
So the motion has been seconded. If you're seeking an amendment to the motion, I suppose you'd have to ask the moving party and the second whether they're amenable to your amendment.
I'd have to know what your amendment was.
So I'm asking to amend it to 4 stories and essentially, I'm still going back and forth over the additional units, so that's
It's
where I'm
four,
at.
I thought, though, I don't understand the amendment
Isn't
because
it
4
3.5?
stories is allowed now.
It's
That's what we
allowed.
just heard.
What are we're talking about, 3.5 or
4?
4.5, I thought she said.
Yeah, 4.5 change, 4 is already allowed.
4.5 stories. So 4 is allowed, they're asking for 4.5.
And so you're asking for a half a reduction to 4.
Yes, to 4.
But I mean, then there is no need because it already is 4. I mean, then there's
So
no
then,
need for a motion.
well, the motion also includes the additional units, right?
Oh, so you're asking to amend it to approve the additional units, but at 4, not at 4.5.
Yeah, I could, I think the additional units it's very close to what the original PDP asked for. I certainly would want to look at what the traffic study states for the area. I used to live in Bradburn. My kids used to go to the academy. I know the traffic that the residents are talking about. So That's all. I think at least 4 stories, because I'm very sensitive to how tall that building is and adjacent to the 2-story product. And I think there can be some accommodation for setbacks and step backs in that area. I know I can't get that into here, so I would prefer we stick with 4 stories.
No, I don't accept the amendment.
I would, but
Talk through the rationale to me to that, because I don't think that, I mean, it's not going to fit their concept. And most of the things that you guys want to, that I've heard the concerns of the public and council want to address, we've been told multiple times are things that will be able to be addressed in the ODP. So I hate to use the term second bite at the apple, but that's where you would be able to address those concerns. If I look at this building for myself and I see 4.5 stories, it seems like they're trying to accommodate something on the rooftop that makes sense for the area, as long as it's not the whole building in my mind. So I'm trying to understand what you get out of decreasing the half a story that I think they need in order to have the additional units. So if you're not going to have the half a story, I mean, why not just say no to the whole thing?
that's an option too.
Councilor Namella?
Um, 4 stories is allowed. There's no clarity over how it's going to be implemented. This 4.5 stories is actually 5 stories, so I feel it's a little disingenuous to say that we're allowing 4.5 stories, because we're all thinking about height, and that's actually 5 stories. If we're going to describe height as building area, almost like an FAR, not really a floor area ratio, but we're talking about 4 1/2 of a 5th story. We could certainly say 4 stories could be construed as some building portions being 3 stories and some building portions being 5 stories. Like, that's how, there's no confirmation for me that it wouldn't be a full 5 ons. When we go with the PDP, we're asking, or we're accepting 4.5 stories. There's no guarantee it's how that's going to be implemented. It's just an allowance that's not clearly stated how we're going to interpret it. So for me, I'm struggling on that one. Even stating 4.5 stories, might as well just say, I don't know. Okay. I guess if we're not going to change it, then I'll probably vote no.
Councilor Azadi?
I have a question. Can I ask the developers a question? Would 4 stories affect the number of units at all, or does this just affect the rooftop restaurant if we keep it at 4 versus 4.5? I can't hear you.
It would change how we have to look at it, and possibly the.
Can you speak in the microphone for the record, please? Thank you.
Yes, it would change how we would look at the development concept, and certainly it would impact the economic viability of how you have to look at it. I think.
But the number of units is the question.
Yes, it could.
But those are 2nd and 3rd floor.
Yeah, that's the present concept, but you might have to rethink it if you change the building form. So it's kind of has been discussed. We're getting into a level of detail that is really not part of the PDP process. I'm not really, it doesn't make sense for me to design to that level of detail until I know whether the PDP is approved or not yet. And so, I have faith that the ODP process will address all these issues that are being discussed right now, and hopefully everybody else does too. That's how I look at it.
Let me add if I could, Dan. Bobby, it's a good question. I think what's important here is that for us, again, we're trying to do well by doing good with micro condos for any kind of demographic who wants to live in a place like Bradburn. And what's key for us, we've done a very extensive pro forma on this modeling, what we're trying to get approved here tonight. And if you look at really the overall landscape of development today, the answer is it would certainly impact our pro forma, right? Because we only have 2 recurring models in this building. That's the rooftop deck, and that's the main floor retail. Otherwise, we're selling the micro condos and we're selling the commercial space as well. Now, if you understand, this is not a developer coming in and trying to build the biggest building in Bradburn Village. Please keep in account that we incur great risk in building 64 for sale units. Number one is construction defect, right? So we have to be very mindful how we build this. It has to be sustainable. And more importantly, we have to buy owner-controlled insurance policy to make sure that we can insure ourselves in case something like that were to happen, which is very common in Colorado. It's been really the melting pot of construction defect is the state we're in today. Not to mention the fact construction cost, tap fees, soft cost, mill levy in Bradburn is very high as well. So the answer is very directly, this concept does not be, it would not be viable if we had to scrape the rooftop deck as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Is the project viable if you take out the office?
No, again, our
Please speak from the microphone.
I'm sorry. I'm getting my steps in today. No, it would not. So we did a pro forma on this concept. So we're talking 6,500 square feet of office space as a whole. That's on the 4th floor anyways. The real hit would be the recurring model on the rooftop and the retail space.
So the primary revenue you're getting is from the retail.
Because everything else would be sold off, correct.
So the office, I mean, the
That'll
amount.
be for sale as well.
The office would be for sale.
It will.
Okay. All right.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So I think it's important, especially with this kind of thing, to talk about why we're voting the way we're going to vote. I don't know how everybody else feels. For me, this is a yes, because for purchase condo at this price point, specifically the price point we're hearing from you is something we don't have. It's something that we sorely need.
Right.
I would say that the other thing is I hear the concerns and I feel the concerns that we've heard here tonight, and I share them, but I know that those are things that are going to be addressed in the ODP. And I think that it's important at least to hear those concerns tonight, because, tonight's approval doesn't mean this happens.
Right.
It means that that we adjust what we're adjusting tonight, and then we go to the next phase. So with that being said, I'm comfortable with this because of those things, and I'm hopeful that you can work through those concerns that I think are real valid concerns that we've heard from the residents around the area and from other council members.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Councilor Seymour.
I too wanted to discuss my thoughts on this too. I have some deep concerns about the parking that I would stand firm on the ODP. I think we need something to continue to move Bradburn forward. We're looking at buildings, right next to that lot of 3 stories and then we'll butt this up against the west side for that half floor as it may be, which will keep it away from the residential to the east. And so I have concerns, and I want to see the details of that. The 9 units, I don't have a concern on that. I do fully understand your concerns for construction defect and what it has done for that market. So I appreciate someone trying to figure out a way to do this versus building 6 at a time or building apartments and then converting them and it never happens. So I'm going to be a qualified yes on this tonight.
Councilor Emmons.
So I understand, I like the concept of it. I understand the purpose of it. I think this is great for the area. But I also have concerns on height. And every time that we have had a development come through, height has been a issue with our residents. And even if it's half a height more, it's not on the allowable plan. of our 2040 comprehensive plan. I know that they're asking for an exception, which makes this a little bit more challenging as far as accepting, because we made a comprehensive plan to stick to it. And so it's hard to go off of that in that regard. With the note from staff's report that this will be the max allowable residential development within the Bradburn subdivision, that's also concerning because it's at max capacity for that. And so I understand there can be variations that we can look at with that, but those are my two greatest concerns, which are the two exceptions that we're being asked to review tonight. And with the information that I have at this point, I know that this is first look, and I know that the ODP goes into a deeper dive and we have a greater say, but the information that I have at this point, I cannot move forward with that.
Councilor Newmellen.
I'll wait until.
Councilor Azadi.
Thank you, Mayor. I like the term qualified yes. I think that's a good term, Councilor Seymour. This is for sale. So the for sale condo at 300-ish, right?
In the 300s.
In the 300s. That's unbelievable. I think that outweighs my concerns. I have a lot of concerns, but I think we can address them in the ODP process. But it's just such a needed type in that area. In this city, in this state, that I have to say yes to this. So thanks for bringing this forward, and we can talk more in the ODP.
Thank you.
Councilor Newmellen.
Only if Councilor, I just want to make sure everybody else has gone before me. I'll go.
His thing wasn't on,
All right.
so
Got it,
go.
okay. I just want to remind my council colleagues that the use of the condos is not a guarantee with this approval for this additional stories that, once this PDP gets changed to allow 4.5 stories, it could be any use within there. So it's not the ownership piece, which I am excited about too. That is not a guarantee. If this doesn't pencil out financially, it very well could be a rental product. So I just want to make sure that you temper your excitement with knowing just that it may not happen. So that's all.
We can make our voices heard at the ODP. Councilor Baker.
Well, I will be voting no. I think this will be an adverse influence on, the community. It's too tall and there's not enough parking and it's going to choke up the neighborhood.
I too, I have the same concerns you've heard, so you don't need to hear them again. But I do want to see what comes forward and how you can do it. I do believe in the condos, and I do believe in home ownership, not rental. And I really want to see the concept of going to what you're asking for. So I don't want to say no at this point. And the qualified yes at this point sounds good. So we do need the condos. I've been shouting from the rooftops what's going downtown, and those are going to be for sale. We need more, and I applaud you for bringing those forward, and I hope they don't change. Councilor Namella.
Sorry, I just had a question for staff. The ODP, will it come to the council? It would. Okay.
It'll also come before concept plan review.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMont?
Yes.
Councilor Emmons?
Yes. Or, excuse me, no.
Got it. Councilor Izadi?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Councilor Nermella?
No.
Councilor Seymour?
Yes.
Councilor Baker?
No.
The motion passes on a 4-3 vote.
Do people need a break before we hear the next hearing?
Let's roll.
Okay. That brings us to our next public hearing on the 2023 Community Block Grant Annual Action Plan and first reading of Councilor's Bill 36. Oh, yeah. So we have no presentation.
No presentation,
Okay.
Mayor.
It is 9:41, and I will open the public hearing. Do we have anybody?
Do not have anyone signed up to speak.
Nope. Is there anyone, since we did it the first time, that wants to speak?
You need to look at this. It doesn't say anything about requiring to be signed up before in the rules and procedures for public hearing. So
Mr. Palmer, you know you're not to be just outbreaking. I just asked, is there anyone that wants to speak? If not, we will go on to motion. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 36 on first reading, providing for a supplemental appropriation of funds to the 2023 budget of the Community Development Block Grant Fund.
Do we need B2 first?
I'm sorry, I jumped all the way down.
That's okay.
Let's go in.
Councilor Seymour.
Let's go in numerical order. B2, move to approve the allocation of the Community Development Block Grant funds as set forth in the presentation agenda memo for the 2023 program year and authorize staff to submit the 2023 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Councilor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item B, 10B2. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Numella?
Yes, so in the suggested breakdown of how we'd spend the dollars, it looks like $190,000 is being proposed for the community event and open air market. Can you confirm that, and how do we have a number that justifies that versus other things that we heard from the community as a need?
Thank you, Councilor Nemeller. Molly Taylor, Housing Coordinator. At the beginning of this process, as we looked at the allocation and the outstanding projects that we brought to you last year that still need investment, we noted that the carryover was a pretty good match for the landscaping requirements to set up that site. Our in-house work group identified a need of approximately $200,000 to get that site ready to program.
I'm just wondering if there's some element where we could potentially look at getting matching funds from somewhere else outside of paying for the entire landscaping need for that project, and then be able to potentially, I saw a need for like a car share or some transportation assistance for our low-income housing projects, or affordable housing projects. So, yeah, I'm just surprised that that's I thought originally this, the allotment or request for this project was a lot less than $190,000, like closer to $50,000 or something to help prepare this, so.
The original request in 2022 to look at the analysis and setup of the site was $50,000.
And did we grant that? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know that we worked all the way through that funding.
Has that analysis been completed?
Yes, it has.
Okay, and that's where the $200,000.
The $190,000 is a carryover. Help me if I'm going the wrong direction.
Yeah, I'm just saying you mentioned that the landscaping for the project has been determined to be approximately $200,000, which you're trying to meet with utilizing that carryover, a portion of that carryover for that. Did that number come out of the feasibility analysis, or?
There are a couple different components that have taken place in the past year. We did the environmental study, And then we also had an analysis performed by the lead school to look at how we could make this market center work for the low moderate area residents and make sure that it had vitality, was programmed, and did what our residents asked us to do. That did not approach a $50,000 price point. That also was paid for out of general fund, which was the money that we asked you for in the 2022 to do an analysis after this project came forward. The carryover of $190,000 arrives at a time when we are sitting down with the AAP and looking at outstanding work that has not been completed. And internally, this is still a bit of a thumbnail estimate. We have grading to do, we have drainage to do, we have a decision to be made with our neighbors regarding fencing and the landscape design for that. And the staff preliminary pricing for that is around $200,000.
Okay, admittedly, I'm rather dubious about the feasibility of this project, the outreach that has been conducted to ensure that this is unanimously a need within, or unanimously heard from the array of demographic and diversity that we have in that area. So without, I mean, I've seen that, the Run Westy Run project did not maintain its vibrancy, and it has closed. So, putting money towards use like this, I'm just more concerned about the viability of the use itself, how well it will actually integrate with the needs of the community, the desires of the community, and I'm seeing other needs that are probably more present and needed by a broader set of community members.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Lindsay. I would offer, as the Economic Development Director, Lindsay Kimball, just pointed out, we had 4 meetings with the residents last year, and this was not the specific design, but the concept design was what emerged from the conversation with historic Westminster residents. We heard from people all the way down to the railroad tracks, all the way out to Newton Court. We heard from a pretty broad swath of neighbors. Admittedly, we need to go back and speak with these residents once again and reconvene as we look at the planning process, the design process, and establish what would be set up as a community use to be programmed by our area residents.
Right, because this is not going to be managed by the city.
That is what the analysis was to identify, was how would we create an operator role for the site.
Okay. Thanks.
And I will continue to look for input from our residents on the other needs that you have identified.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mayor Pro Tem?
I was going to ask to call the question.
Oh. Roll call, please.
Councillor Emmons.
Yes.
Pardon me. Councillor Zadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councillor Nermella.
I'll go with a yes overall.
Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
Councillor Baker.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item B3, Councilor's Bill number 36. Councilor Seymour?
Now we'll move past Councilor's Bill number 36 on first reading, provided for a supplemental appropriation of funds to the 2023 budget of the Community Development Block Grant Fund.
Councilor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 36. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councillor Zadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councillor Nermella.
Yes.
Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
Councillor Baker.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Councillor Emmons.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to Resolution 23. Councilor Seymour?
Thank you. Move to adopt resolution number 23, authorizing the assignment of $6,983,558 of the city's private activity bond allocation for the 2023 to the Adams County Public Housing Authority, DBA Maker Housing Partners, for the qualified purposes set forth in the resolution, and authorize the mayor to execute the necessary documents.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 23. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
Counselor Namella?
Yes.
Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
Counselor Baker?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott?
Yes.
Counselor Emmons?
Yes.
Counselor Azadi?
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 10D. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize staff to apply for the Colorado Water Conservation Board Water Plan Grant for the construction of improvements for the Big Dry Creek at City Park Drainage Restoration Project.
Counselor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 10D. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Namella?
A fingers crossed, yes.
Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
Counselor Baker?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott?
Yes.
Counselor Emmons?
Yes.
Counselor Azadi?
Yes.
Mayor McNally?
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to Counselor's Bill number 34. Counselor Emmons?
I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 34 on second reading to provide for a supplemental appropriation of funds in the amount of $1,273,686 to the 2023 budget of the General Capital Improvement Fund, WURP Roadway Alley Capital Project. This appropriation will cover the construction contract with Hall Irwin Incorporated totaling $1,042,336 plus a 15% contingency in the amount of $156,350 and other construction-related services such as restoration and materials testing and construction management services totaling $75,000.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 34. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
Counselor Baker?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott?
Yes.
Counselor Emmons?
Yes.
Counselor Azadi?
Yes.
Yes.
Counselor Normella?
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
The public portion of this meeting has concluded. Mr. Fenko, is there reason for executive session for this evening?
Yes, Mayor. Tonight's agenda does propose an executive session for City Council pursuant to Section 111C7 of the Westminster Municipal Code for the purpose of discussing the city's position on issues subject to formal negotiation and the progress and status of such negotiation, and pursuant to Section 24640 4E1 Colorado Revised Statute for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations and instructing negotiators related to funding and construction of the new Westminster Municipal Court building and the potential inclusion of the Community Reach Center.
I will poll each counselor to see if you want to go into executive session. Counselor Azadi?
Yes.
Counselor Normella?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Myself, Nancy McNally, yes. Counselor Emmons?
Yes.
Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
Counselor Baker?
Yes.
It is now 9:54, and this meeting's adjourned, and we will be headed to executive session after a 5-minute break.
This is Judge Lyon.